from our closed session, and we'll return to our closed session once we have our legal counsel here. So, begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, where are we? So we have a Spanish translator, is that where we are?
Yes, we do. Esperanza
And-
Villegas.
Esperanza Villegas.
Muy buenas noches, mi nombre es Esperanza Villegas y estoy aquí para traducir. Si alguno de ustedes necesita ayuda, me puede encontrar en la parte trasera de esta sala.
Gracias. I want to notice that there is headsets for the hearing impaired. Please contact us if you need it. Announcements for closed session. As I said, we will go back to closed session, so we don't have an announcement quite yet. Donations. Do I hear a motion for accepting with gratitude?
Move to accept with gratitude.
Second.
Motion is by Cordero, second by Parker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing all ayes, so passed. Introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions?
Well, I do have an introduction and presentation tonight. We're delighted to have Abby Vasquez and Jennifer Gibson here tonight. They are English language development teachers on special assignment. They're here to share information on the English language development curriculum lab, and if you'll please go to the podium and use the microphone, we'd like to hear what you have to tell us.
Thank you. It's a lot.
Oh, well, just talk.
Okay. Yes, it looks like everything's working well. I'm Abby Vasquez, and this is Jennifer Gibson. And we are this year Teachers on Special Assignment, helping the elementary schools with English language development. And part of why we are doing that is that does seem to be one of our areas in closing that achievement gap. It's one of our subgroups that needed the additional help. What we have noticed in our schools is that the students do get that conversational proficiency, and if you are talking to them, you would think they have that English down. But once we get into the academic English, we're noticing that they don't have a solid foundation. So that's where the English language development programs are there to help. There are two models that have been used in the past, and that is the acquisition method, which when we went English only, this was a big part of how we did things. It's the full immersion method. It's emphasis on if they're immersed in it, if they're around English all the time, they will pick it up. This is opposed to a formal instruction, very structured language learning with the emphasis on grammar and forms. What they found out was that the acquisition model students spoke all the time but made frequent errors. And they found that the students who had the formal instruction had nearly perfect grammar and forms, structures, but they didn't talk. So what we needed to make sure is that our language instruction really has both, a balance. So the goal of our English language development is to systematically teach all of our students the language that they did not learn before entering our schools. They will not be taught in any other subject area, and that they need in order to be successful in everyday life. The difference between ELD and ELA, our English Language Arts program is our reading and writing program. And the ELD standards are the pathway, the on-ramp to our students who are second language learners being successful. They need the structured language practice and forms in order to be successful in English language arts. The idea is that they have to get targeted, systematic instruction. It's not going to happen in their regular language arts program. It needs to be a targeted amount of time. And as we know, academic success depends on being able to read well And learning to read well depends on a rich language vocabulary. Our students who come in with an English language background that is rich know when they come across a word when they are reading, oh, I've heard that word before, and they can make a guess. A second language learner doesn't have any context to pull on, so they have to be systematically taught all that vocabulary and the ways to bridge that context so that they can be successful.
All right. So we know that the board has made a focus goal that we will increase our learning for English language learners, and you're familiar with that. So what Abby and I have been doing is we've been working with teachers in the district, and we first started with a phase of saturation, and that's training with our systematic ELD model. So this fall, we have been doing staff meetings at the different sites. We've been pulling grade level teams in to work on what they needed to know to effectively teach ELD. And we're also doing monthly professional development workshops after school and at school sites as we are invited to do that. And those include technology, graphic organizers, things that help teachers be successful with our ELL learners, our English language learners. We are also going to sites and modeling lessons and showing teachers how research-based ELD works and the success of that particular model. Coming up, we are looking at, in the spring, continuing the planning and training of different sites, also going to staff meetings by invitation, and then refinement of teacher lessons and working with them to continue to work on their practice, and then eventually the training of principals in their ELD observations and having them look at what is research-based ELD and then starting to observe teachers in that particular practice. With next fall, we're looking at the continuation of the training model, but then also bringing in what we call front-loading, which is a lot like pre-teaching for content areas, giving content language for our English language learners so that they can be successful in our content areas. And these include things like total physical response, a lot of movement, and graphic pictures so that kids can understand what is being taught in the content area. And then we also want to bring in site ELD leaders who are going to help bring each school site the information and the expertise they need to continue with ELD. And then what we've already started and want to continue is an alignment to our content areas so that when we're teaching ELD, we're actually hanging it on the framework of science or reading or social studies, whatever that may be. As we go along in the spring of 2009, continuation of the previous phases and principal observations of ELD would continue at that point, and Abby and I would be a resource to go in and help with grade level teams that may need more support. We also are looking at the ADEPT assessment, which is aligned with our CELT testing at this point in time, and it is a tool for us to have a data analysis of how our English language learners are doing in our school sites. So that's one thing that we're looking at in the future. As we move along into fall 2009, we have a plan for continuous training in ELD, a data analysis that would continue. How are our English language learners doing? What can we do to help them succeed? And then in spring of 2010, continuing this training, monthly professional development, and again, more data analysis of the ADEPT assessment. So this is a long-term process, and this is something that we're talking to other school districts in our state who are a little bit ahead of us, and they are saying this has been very successful for them to do, and they're pulling out of all kinds of different crises and PI status, and so we're really excited about seeing this model. And I'm going to hand this over to Abby here.
Okay, so we also brought in some of our things that we've already done with teachers. We've done instructional planning, again, mapping out the entire school year so that they know that they're going to reach every standard for ELD, that they're going to address all of the things by the end of the year, and then finding ways to tie that to curriculum. Teacher workshops, we were very excited. We had many different school sites represented, and as you can tell, it was standing room only, teachers coming in and finding ways to make graphic organizers to make content accessible to students. and then also doing demonstration lessons for teachers, not necessarily for the students, but for the teachers to understand what an ELD lesson looks like. And our accountability, we are directly supervised and evaluated by Robin. We have feedback forms that are being filled out by administrators and by the staff as we do trainings, as we go in and do lessons. We're asking for their feedback because we want to be as accountable, and we want to be a service to teachers that they are anxious to have. And by getting their feedback, we want to know that we're actually doing something that's helping them out. And then we have an online calendar so that everyone can know, okay, what do those girls do all day? What are they doing down there at that district office, or whose school site are they at if they're not here with us? So we do have an online calendar that is public, that anyone can access. And that is our program as it stands right now.
And I'm sure Robin Sawaski will want to comment on this because, you know, this is a primary goal, and it's a primary reason that the elementary district is in program improvement. So we have high hopes riding on the work of these fine people.
Well, I think you can see from the presentation and the thoroughness of their work and their plan that we couldn't have chosen better teacher leaders for this. One thing they left out is that as they're working with people in the state, many of the teachers have commented that there's one thing that we are actually way ahead in our work, and it's really that integrated curriculum and linking to the content areas. Abby and Jennifer, their work in that instructional calendar is just amazing. Teachers, they're just on fire when they get done with that work, either in the curriculum lab after school or I've seen them on sites. They're so excited because they understand how it all fits in and it's not something separate. And many people in the state are still treating it as a separate little piece of work every day. And Abby and Jennifer have already brought it in to integrate into the curriculum. So I'm really pleased that that's going on. And they're working on the evaluation and assessment, as you can see. But I'm hearing from the principals and teachers that, I mean, I've heard just exceptional comments on the work. So it's exactly what they need. We have high hopes of course, helping our students reach, you know, higher levels of performance.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Mhm.
I have some questions. And thank you for your presentation. And this is aligned with the ELD standard?
Yes, English language learners are mandated, a state mandate that they receive 30 minutes of specialized English language instruction every day. So any student who is identified as a second language learner is required to have that time set aside. So what we're helping teachers do is ensure that that time is first happening and that it's valuable, and that as we said, that was something when we've gone to other districts, they've been excited about, that it's not this little balloon hanging over in the corner where it's a separate entity. We're trying to really bring it and tie it in, even though it is the English language development standards, that they can bring in other content areas so that the students are very engaged.
So it's really you're teaching two sets of standards, the content area standards and the ELD standards.
It's explicit language instruction for ELD time, but we can use the vehicle of, say, science to teach that explicit language instruction. So yes, we get to actually have more time in some other content areas, but along with that, it's explicit language, grammar, syntax, language patterns.
And the ELD standards were designed as that one graphic you saw. They're called the roadmap or the on-ramps to the English language arts standards. So there's, if you look at them side by side, there's clusters of ELD standards that are the build-up, what students should be doing at, say, the beginning level, intermediate level, early advanced, that lead to mastery in one of the English
So when
language
you say
arts.
integration, that's what you mean by integration?
No, not necessarily. The ELD work, the studying or the instruction in English language development is integrated into the science lesson. I guess an example would be,
Order words with digestion.
sure, there you go. There was a lesson actually all the principals, elementary principals in our first principals meeting this year we split up in 2 groups, and we went to the academy, and we watched Abby and Jennifer teach 2 lessons separately. So there's a small group of principals in each one, and they each taught the same lesson so that the principals could see what an effective ELD lesson looked like. So you might explain just briefly, so Dr.
For
Noel.
example, the intent of the lesson was to teach order words first, next, then, also, finally, and in conclusion. But I hung it on the framework of science. So first I eat
Sounds
the
like a
apple.
political speech.
You're right.
Exactly.
So
You don't
first
need any
I,
content.
that's right. And so we use science, though, as our vehicle. So first I eat the apple, and then it travels through the esophagus, and then down into the stomach. It also goes through the small intestine and next into the large intestine. And then so we go through this whole process with the kids. But the idea is that it's systematically teaching order words. That's the ELD standard. But we're using science as the background to hang it on.
And it was a science lesson they had already learned, so they did know the digestive system. But did they benefit from being reminded of the digestive system? Of course they did.
Yes.
But we used the first, next, then. That was the specific language that they needed to learn. And then they took it to application. It was the students, okay, what else would we use time and order words for? And then we had my
Your
lovely
favorite.
student, who is my absolute favorite, who is, when you go to the grocery store, first you buy your chicken and then you buy your milk. And was able to give me the detailed description of how you travel through a grocery store. And of course, first you buy your chicken and then you get your milk.
I do that.
But,
Yeah.
but they were able to go from what we gave them to doing their own first, next, then, which was the focus of the lesson.
I had one just informational question that I would personally like. The underlying theoretical foundation for this, is this the accelerated, or what do you call it, systematic ELD?
Yes.
That's the systematic ELD that you saw first
So I've
March.
been
of-
looking
Yes.
on the Monterey side and looking up Susanna Dutro and wanting to read something. And I get, the impression I get is if I don't sign up for a seminar and go for professional development, I'm not going to get anything to read. Do you have something I can
We can
read?
do
Do
something
you
like
want
that for you.
Yes. You know what? I have to say, long time ago, I think it was probably May, or it was 2005, you got a little booklet that said systematic ELD, and I'm sure it didn't have a lot.
I want more than a booklet. I want to read I want to read the theory, and I want to read the research.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay.
She's actually
That-
written a whole, yeah, we can,
that's-
We can
I-
take-
I'm
we
you
can
can
thinking
get
about
that.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Noel.
I've got a couple of quick questions. Don't go anywhere.
We're good.
One is, could you tell us how, this sounds great, and it also sounds optional, how many of the elementary schools are participating?
Well, first of all, our goal this year is every site will participate. And we also have a goal that every teacher will be trained by the end of this year. So we've done about half the schools so far. And the model that we're following and training is saturation, which means we're training, which we have have been trained the highest level that we possibly can in the state, and then we're doing the direct training with the teachers by grade level. And so we plan on hitting every school, every grade level, and every teacher this year.
Great.
So that's where we're going with this, and then we'll start fine-tuning it as soon as we can, after
Right.
we've done our saturation.
Great. And my other quick question is, can you share the website?
Yes.
Yes, and if you actually look on your last page, our email address on the resources, which we didn't go all the way to on here, is our email
It's
address.
page 6, sbeld@gmail.com.
sbsdeld@gmail.com.
Okay, uh-huh.
And it's a public calendar in Google. And we
Okay.
actually found that Google was the most accessible calendar that we could do.
So
for
this looks
everyone.
like an email
That's the email address,
And then we
it's a
have we have all of the graphic organizers on a Picasa photo gallery.
Uh-huh.
And teachers can go into this and then
How do they access the
create-
calendar?
The calendar, we've mainly emailed that out. There are
Gotcha.
some glitches with it,
Uh-huh.
but if we email it to someone, they can get right onto it.
Okay.
And then same with the Picasa
Which
photo
we have all
gallery.
of their emails, don't we,
Uh-huh.
board
Right.
members?
Mhm.
Yes. So we've emailed, like the open house we did at the beginning of the year, we
Right.
did a mass email.
Uh-huh.
And so we can email you the website
Great.
as well.
Thank you.
And then the last one is that we are doing the technology to support ELD, and this is a resource hot linked page through Google, and they can bring up these different sites to help
So
support
the teachers can
strategies.
use
This one,
it.
we need a microscope to be able to read.
I was going to say,
but-
I'm wondering if we could get a enlarged copy of that because we can't
Oh, look
see
at
the
that.
one on our.
Sorry.
We'll
No
get
problem.
that into the board brief.
We can
Great.
email you this through our
No,
document link.
we'll put it in the board brief
Okay,
so everyone
great.
has
Okay,
access
sorry.
to it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I just had a. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just had a really quick question. I think it's quick. I'm wondering if you could just highlight like 2 or 3 of the major differences between the immersion approach and the systematic ELD approach.
Oh, okay. With systematic ELD, it's really a state mandated program. And so that's something that we need to recognize. But with systematic ELD, it's a set aside time where we are going through standards based on proficiency level, which are determined by the CELT scores. So for example, if I'm a new English learner, I would be a 1, an L1, a learner 1. And so my instruction would be based on the standards for a learner 1. If I scored a learner 5 or 4, I'd have a different set of standards. And basically, after I've gone through those standards over a year's period of time, the goal is that I'm going to move up on my CELT, and I'm going to have all the gaps filled in for my learning needs. Immersion tends to be more of, if we go to a foreign country and we're just learning
We'll
and
pick it up.
talking, we'll pick it up, and you will.
But
you're-
not perfectly.
And not academically. So really, the academic language, would, could, should, may, can, that's all being discussed during ELD. And it's the pieces that our kids are missing. When we do express placement, which is our informal testing, we will ask a child, how do you introduce someone? Or how do you ask someone their name? And you'll see,
Yeah.
how do you ask someone their name?
And they, so many of the kids is, can I know your name?
Can I know your name?
That's not the same.
So there's basic academic language.
Will you tell me your
that's
name,
missing.
or I want to know your name?
Right.
So it's being able to have that academic fluency, complete fluency.
So,
Immersion would be, what's up?
And also,
Yeah.
can I know your name would be okay.
Yes.
Because they're getting their point across. So with the immersion, they can communicate on that interpersonal level, but they're not getting that rich academic level of being, and you can see these children if you talk to them on the playground, they sound completely fluent, but not at an educated level, not at a level where they're competitive with the native English speakers.
It's very laser focused. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. We've been doing some site visits and to elementary sites, and there's a lot going on, and it's all happening kind of in the very instructional time in the morning, and very lot of excitement. And so I look forward to some great results. I'm really pleased to have both that we're focusing on this, but also that teachers are focusing on this and helping us out. And I'm confident that we're going to see some results not too long. I also want to compliment you on your very cheery and welcoming room on Ortega Street, and thank you
you.
very much for that. It's informational as well, immensely informational, but it's also cheery and welcoming. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Abby, Jennifer. I'd like to go on with superintendent's report. Very good. Fortunately, we're not currently in the path of any of the tragic wildfires in Southern California. Our hearts go out to those who are affected. However, we are monitoring air quality and are curtailing outdoor activities. Just this afternoon, the Santa Barbara High School and Dos Pueblos tennis match was canceled, as well as the San Marcos High School water polo game. I'd like to call your attention to the board brief. The board brief is a report that is regularly issued to the board. It's a collection of reports and articles on school and district matters. A copy is on display in the reception area, or it can be provided through the superintendent's office. The October 12 board brief had a memo on the SELPA's funding allocation model. I wanted to particularly highlight that because the encroachment that the general fund pays for special education services is tremendous. I sit on the Santa Barbara County Special Education Local Plan Area Joint Powers Agreement Board. Last spring, I requested a review of the county-wide SELPA funding allocation model. The JPA board contracted with Paul Goldfinger of School Services of California to review our funding model. Here, we all thought Paul Goldfinger, who was the grand wizard of finance in California, had retired, but he was still available, apparently. A copy of the September 24, 2007 Goldfinger analysis of the allocation model is included in the board brief. It includes considerations about the current model and recommends that the JPA board create a simpler allocation model. The JPA will continue discussions about the model with Paul Goldfinger's assistance, as well as how to reduce regional costs, and anticipates future reports, and I'll be giving you that information as we receive it. The Santa Barbara Rotary Club's outstanding special education teacher for 2007 is Margaret Holbrook, Goleta Valley Junior High School teacher. She was recognized for her exceptional teaching abilities and described as someone who truly recognizes the need for dignity and respect for all students. Congratulations to Margaret Holbrook. On Friday, the California Library Association will award the 2007 Zoya Horn Intellectual Freedom Award to Goleta Valley Junior High students Isabel D'Arcy, Sophie D'Arcy, and Kids Speaking Up. And the board knows these students. As you recall, the students were recognized at our September 11 meeting. In the coming weeks, now I'll note that I will use order words here. First, we have a Theater Fest flyer. In fact, for our events, we're putting a flyer together so that people can keep track of all the various theater events at our schools. Copies are available at the back of the room. I believe board members have copies as well. We're working on placing co-sponsored Theater Fest ads in local papers as a way to encourage the community to enjoy the incredible talent that our students have to offer. Next, the GATE and Advanced Learning Information Night will take place next Monday in the Luke Theater. Then, McKinley Elementary School will hold a Kermes Festival on November 3rd, beginning at noon. Also, there will be an entertainment and spaghetti dinner at La Colina Junior High on November 8th. Plus, how am I doing with my order words here? Santa, it's not coming up for a while. Plus, Santa Barbara Junior High will host Family Ultimate Science Exploration Night on November 14. And we, the board, are looking forward to single school plan reports on categorically funded programs to increase student achievement. The reports will start on November 1st at 4 o'clock right here in the boardroom. Finally, Ed Diaz, our Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, is not with us this evening. Ed Diaz is no longer working in the district. He has resigned to pursue other opportunities. And that concludes the superintendent's report for tonight.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have just a really quick question about one of those items.
Oh, sure.
The GATE and advanced placement meetings.
Yes.
Will there be an interpreter there,
Oh, yes.
or is there a Spanish language meeting planned?
There will be translation. I believe it's on-site translation. Correct. Yes.
We're on to public comments.
Abe Jahadny. Oh, Dan Choi and Nan Verkijk. How do you say that?
Verkijk.
Okay, good.
We brought our AD posse with us.
Well, I drew the short straw, so I get to go first. My name is Dan Choi. I'm the athletic director from Dos Pueblos High School.
I'm Nan Verkijk, athletic director, Santa Barbara High School.
Abe Jahadami, athletic director at San Marcos High School.
Is there an actual proposal written up, Paul, in front of that the board has seen?
Dr. Sarvis presented that at the last board meeting, your request for $10,000 per school.
Okay. So basically, this is in reference to that. Each school we average is approximately $135,000 a year And that's sort of the minimum cost. That would be transportation, training supplies, officials, police, ambulances, workers at the game management, that sort of thing. We are grateful for the coaches' stipends that the district still does pay for, but that is, as you can see, when we combine the totals of the approximately $400,000, it's still just a small part of that. And then just from just kind of a personal standpoint, last year, unfortunately, we had an accident to one of our football players, and it was a fairly public accident that happened. And luckily, he's doing much better every day. He's improving. But before that year, we sat down, and Scott O'Leary, his legacy has always been to have an ambulance at the games, even though the state no longer requires it. And unfortunately, that was something at the on the chopping block before the beginning of that year. And thank goodness we decided that it was something that we wanted to continue as our legacy. And I've been told numerous times that if that ambulance was not at the game, Brad Ebner would not be with us. So.
One of the other things that we wanted to talk to you about, I know that you know that athletics fulfills 2 of the years of requirements for physical education. So it's actually something that kids can use to work towards graduation. And our request again to you is $10,000 for each school, which would actually, we have 3,000 athletes between the 3 schools, and the $30,000 would help us tremendously with what we need to do, just as far as safety equipment and ambulance and police. That's basically $10,000 would cover it for each of our schools.
I'm just following up with what Nan said, the 10,000 to the athletic department would help with the safety. For example, this Friday, we were proactive about safety. We moved our big game with Santa Barbara to 5 o'clock because we couldn't get the police force out there. And that is going to cut big time into our revenue. That's our big gate day, but we're going to, it's going to cut big time into that. But safety is more important than anything else. And so having the sheriffs there and being able to get ambulance there is that important. If we were to have it at 7 o'clock, we wouldn't have had them there. And so that's how important safety is to us. That's what the money would go for. We have a difficult time paying for all our basic needs, and the 3 of us would like to request that the board consider helping us with our safety expenses. Thank you.
Question. I don't know whether it's for these people or for Mr. Turnbull, but what do we have? I don't have the former documentation. Do we have the breakdown between the line item on this, the police, the ambulance, et cetera, et cetera?
No, there was no breakdown in the memo that I sent to Dr. Sarvis previously, but I'm sure that we can get that.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much is going for ambulance, how much for police, and the nice round number always makes me want to know more.
It's about $570 a night for an ambulance, and that's five times. We have 8 sheriffs assigned to the game this Friday, and it's about $300. It's $300 plus per sheriff, so that's $2,400 right there. But not all the games require 8, and some of our doubleheaders we asked for 3 sheriffs. But we have at least 3 or 4 sheriffs.
300 per sheriff.
Per sheriff per night. And so.
And do we pay the county that money?
We pay to the sheriff's department, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
We pay to the police department.
Santa Barbara High School pays the police department for that.
Same amount for the police?
About the same amount. Two police officers is a little over $700. So it's about the same amount.
And what determines how many you have to have at a game?
It depends on the game. Santa Barbara, San Marcos, or Dos Pueblos, the crosstown games, you have to have more security out there. You just have to. And so the lesser games, we could go with 3, but we won't go with under 3 sheriffs out there or police out there. We have to have at least 3.
This is security for crowd control.
This is security. Just we basically you have the sheriffs there just in case it gets out of hand, the arrests to be made. But then we also hire supervisors to supervise those games too, and that runs about $10,000 a year for that, and that's for crowd control.
If I may, the schools hire generally either their classified or their certificated staff. So they have teachers who are already on campus or other personnel on campus who are actually within the crowd and at the exits and the peripheral edges of the games themselves. So that's the crowd control piece. The officers are there in case of anything extraordinary. So if there's something that's happening either.
Okay, the crowd control pieces, did you give a separate number on that?
That's even a separate one, but that goes to our classified and
Okay, but
certified
still-
staff. And so that we need to have
Money's
that.
fungible, but it's still money.
Yeah.
How much did you say it was, Abe?
I think it's around 10,000 for that, it's right around there, $10,000 for that.
Well, let me add to that. The number was really due to additional security, additional forces that on top of who we hired in the past, and ambulances that we did not have in the past.
Yeah.
So it was those two factors that are both additional factors and additional strains on ASB funds.
So,
I'm sorry, I just wanted, since our attorney isn't here, I want to make sure we're not off our agenda because we're having a discussion on a public comment item.
Thank you.
And as much as I think this is really important, we're not agendized for it, and we could be in violation of the Brown Act.
the Brown Act allows board members to ask questions to people who speak from the floor.
Okay, but it seemed like we were having discussion with staff.
Well, let me just suggest that when we get to J, a board member may ask to have it put on a future agenda. So we could
Let's
have
do
a
that.
discussion.
Thank you.
To J,
When we get to
To
the end.
J on future agenda items.
Let's have it, put it on the agenda so we can actually talk about it.
well, I wanted to ask them a couple more questions, if I may.
I think that's permissible.
That's fine. Let's just try to stay on our
Have
schedule.
there been gang problems at our athletics events?
Yes.
That fall under this category?
Yes, they have been. And
Do the police already assigned some people? And we're talking about extra police? That's
no,
what I'm trying to get there.
we have to hire them. We don't get them for free.
The gang problems are not, they're very aware of what's happening with the gangs in the game. That's why the police officers are there. There have not been problems between gang members at a game because they are there. There have been problems outside of games,
Yeah.
but not in the game. We feel pretty comfortable that we're doing the best we can to keep that under control.
And do these are regular uniformed police officers?
Yes.
Do they then, do they come early and watch, and I'm trying to address your comments, things that are happening after a game? Are these police we pay for in charge of trying to maintain the peace after the game? And how far away? I mean, how does
Their
that
presence is
work?
there. Their presence is there after the game, too. There is a police presence after the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. One thing I'd like to also address to that is that Dan Choi also brought up safety equipment and ambulances. Every year, we have to recondition every single helmet, and that's part of the process that we have to do. And that reconditioning for safety equipment costs over $7,000 a year. And so we're asking, for that. If you don't recondition a helmet, you cannot use it the following year. And the pads, things like that.
They actually take the helmets and put them under pressure, and if the helmet doesn't pass a test, it's tossed. And then you have to replace that helmet. So we don't have any equipment that isn't safe that's out there for the kids.
That's part of the 10,000 also?
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Was there any more public comment? Dr. Noel?
Hmm?
Is there any more?
I'm sorry, I'm taking notes. Kenneth Locke?
Is there anyone else beyond, after that?
No?
My name is Kenneth Locke, here again, once again. I spoke before the City Council, did a public comment, and I'm encouraging them to consider the fact that we're in a dark age. And I mentioned to them that I could measure the intelligence of this community based on the fact that either it's aware of that fact or it isn't. And so it's kind of interesting situation. In relation to, say, this school in relation to being in a dark age can easily be understood in relation to, sort of say, athletics through tennis. Right now, you have a tennis team. It encourages a relationship which is just based with one arm and based on the fact that it's used as a competitive means to an end. And I'm sorry to say that in a dark age, we recognize the whole basis of what a false concept is in relation to a true concept. The false concept in relation to a one-armed competitive relationship is understood that when it comes to the development of skill, because what I'm bringing to the table, it's ambidextrous. It's based on the complete composition of tennis, how the forehand, backhand, serve are all integrated, and then how it represents ambidextrous. It's kind of, my project's called Tennaissance. It's the Renaissance of tennis. Explains the whole basis of an enlightenment. Let's see, skill in relation to competition, it's just a false concept based on the fact that a person would develop skill in relation to just a competitive relationship. So it's easy to understand the difference between a person who has a relationship with tennis in relation to a dark age versus age of the light, where we understand how things are integrated. The whole basis of like an art-science integration, I think I mentioned to you before, we have to understand the history of art to where it is today in relation to the abstract art movement of the 20th century, and that like the works of Jackson Pollock. And we have to understand that painting now is understood as an exercise primarily, object secondly, where historically it was understood in relation to just the object. And this is the basis of an interdisciplinary education, and we understand the creation of an object. Science will have the exclusive in relation to that. I have 10 seconds here, so I can't explain any more, but again, I'm just trying to bring the attention of this community to recognize that the nature of it's in a dark age. Thank you.
Thank you. We're on to the consent agenda. I can hear a motion unless somebody would like to pull something off the agenda.
I'd like to pull D7 and D11.
D7 and D11. Anyone else? Then can I hear a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of D7 and D11.
Second?
So motion by Corderos, second by Parker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? No. Passes 4-0. Okay, we're on to the action agenda. It is...
Well, I've got you down here for D3. Oh, that's it. I beg your pardon.
Well-
Mr. Wheeler wanted to comment on D3, and it's my error. I apologize.
Thank you very much.
Very taxing job.
Well, it's a pleasure to be in front of you again and to encourage each of you. San Marcos Aquatics Program, which one of my many community hats that I wear as part of that fundraising committee, is attempting to raise $100,000 to embellish the new aquatics facility at San Marcos. And I would just like to offer you all the opportunity to buy a tile for a mere $1,000. You can commemorate yourself or some member of your family or a loved one for all time, and have a proud place on the tile wall at San Marcos's new aquatics facility. And I'm sure Mr. Turnbull will probably be the first in line on this one, so I wanted to make sure he had the opportunity. So thank you very much, and I'm glad this didn't influence the vote, but did you have a question?
I have a question for our public speaker here, and that is, will there be a link on the San Marcos website to...
We're looking to get the
tiles,
link
or-
up right now. We're hoping to do it through the San Marcos website. I know there'll be one through the Santa Barbara Swim Club that'll link into the program that's being developed right now or being approved as part of the D3. So we will get that information out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're on to E1, although we should be going to E3 at 8 o'clock. What time? I can't even see that.
Let's go ahead with E1, then go to E3 directly afterward.
Oh, they're so together. But okay, E1, and our on the second reading and adoption of revised board policy 6173, advanced placement courses and exams, and our resource is Mr. Turnbull.
And this is a continuation of our discussion last week. I'm sure the board will well remember it. Paul?
The, Dr. Sarvis is right, this is a continuation from last week. There are two items very similar, E1 and E2. E2 will recognize international baccalaureate programs as new programs that we really need to recognize. In this particular issue, there are valid arguments on both sides. You heard originally last week that the issue popped up because there were a few teachers across the district who were changing student grades after AP exams had been reported out. The issue came to me because some teachers had been put under what they believed as pressure, as peer pressure, because the parents of students in one class who had received a grade change, a positive grade change, had then gone to associate teachers and said, you know, here's the issue that happened next door. Can we have the same issue? So really what we're looking at here is an issue of parity and equity. The board had asked for a couple of changes in the language. The first one is on option B, in that you see there are A and B pieces to option B now. B is the additional language that was asked for. This was the best that I could do in a compromising way, of course. And on the first page, at the bottom, last paragraph, you will see an underlined portion that was changed to recognize the fact that there are reimbursement rates both from the College Board and from the State Department of California. And so at this point, I would leave it up to you for further debate.
Do we want to, does anyone have a question? We also have one public comment. So do you want to hear the public comment first? Okay, go ahead.
I'm here for a completely different reason, and then I noticed when I was going through the agenda that this was on there. So I didn't really prepare for this, and I feel like I'm kind of out of the loop. I'm coming here as a highly successful AP teacher. I guess what I'd like to say is that I employ a variety of methods as a professional educator in my classroom. One of the things that I do is I offer students the ability to have their grade changed after they have taken the AP test. The AP tests are correlated by the College Board to match with college grades. And what I try to do is, in order to maintain the integrity of my class, I try to ensure parity the best I can between my course and what is offered in the college. And the only thing that I have that I can really measure that with, the only metric available, is the AP test. While I do try to correlate and predict as best I can, there are students who, for a variety of reasons, may end up in a situation where they get a grade that is maybe not reflective of their ability due to the cumulative nature of the class. An example would be physics, which is cumulative. A student may do poorly in the first unit, and that could ultimately lower their grade to a B+. And then as a result, if I'm left without the option of this raising their grade due to the AP test, I'm put in the position of having an arbitrary decision now, because as it stands numerically in the grade report, they've got a B+, and now they come to me, and maybe I feel that their situation is their grade that should be raised, but another student, then I'm looking at them, maybe they've had B+ scoring all the way along, and it really is a B+. So, I mean, that would be just one example. With regard to this decision, I'm at a loss for words, and like I said, I just found that I'm extremely disappointed in this concept. I feel like it takes away something from someone who's, like I said, an educator professional, and it just takes one more tool away from us. Currently, I mean, just at Dos Pueblos, I don't think there's anybody who's analyzed AP data more than myself. And it's because I have tried to figure out how do I achieve the most successful outcomes in the AP classes. Just to give you some background on this, I'm just going to throw some data out here, and you just have to trust that it's legit. My second year teaching, more people got a 5 in AP Physics than in all the prior years that I could find back 25 years at Dos Pueblos in 1 year of teaching. And it's due to mastery learning techniques, one of which includes this grade-changing thing where really I'm trying to say, look, you've got this opportunity now. You've been working really hard. I do review sessions at the end. It really steps them up. The other thing is, in terms of this data, just so you understand the nature of this, you're 5 times more likely if you take my AP Physics class to get a 5 than the national average. And one of the goals in our district, and I've heard Dr. Sarvis say this, is we want to encourage all students to take the AP test. Every single student I've ever had since I've begun teaching 7 years ago has taken the AP test. So the data that I have is reflective of actual real data of, everybody's taken the test. So when I tell you that, I have a 98% passing rate, that's a 98% passing rate with all students taking the exam. One of the reasons they take the exam is because they have this incentive. Some of the students who have senioritis, we've maybe heard of this, and I'll help raise their grades. And the reason that that's beneficial, just because some people might say, well, they're done, who cares? There are scholarships that are available to students based on their performance on these tests once they get into college. There are scholarships based on what they do during their final semester. And so there is incentive to get the people who would just blow off the test and not take it. And our schools are rated right now. There are rankings, whether we like them or not, that are based on how many people just take a test. And if all the seniors blow off the test because there's no incentive, we're really taking away something, that I've found very useful. And so I'm extremely disappointed in this. I think that the excellent AP teachers who utilize these things were not consulted. We've created a policy. Either choice, one looks like a mandate of what I'm required to do. Am I running out? Am I going the other way? I'm going the other way. Anyway, the point is, I'm basically, the two choices are, I no longer have this option, which again, I think is demonstrated. You can ask any of my students, is a huge motivator, huge excitement. We rally around the test. We go and we do review sessions for about 60 hours the few weeks before the test. So that's a huge motivator. And then the other thing is, lost track because I know I'm messed up on the time. But anyway, I wasn't really, like I said.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, ask me any question. I would.
Can we clarify?
I'm really
because
just
I think,
upset that there's no.
I don't think there's
consulting
something. I don't think there's something to be upset about because I think what we're doing is what you want. But,
Option B seems to lay out specifically what grades I'm allowed to do.
So you want that to be more general.
I want it to be. Here's my issue. I have a student that got a D. Okay, and they've been struggling all along, and the average in another teacher's class, what they would do is they would just fold and say, that's life. In my class, I say, you know what? We've got these review sessions coming up. I'm going to help you, and I'm going to ensure that you can pass this test. And you know why I know that? Because every year only one person doesn't pass, and that's always someone who doesn't care. Statistically, if you're in my class and you try, you are going to pass the test. And so I do what I can. I encourage it. I achieve outstanding success rates with all of these things, and I feel like that's not helping me out. If a student gets a D and they get a C, and I was graded them too hard or they stepped up, I mean, you get it. Okay?
I got it. I'm
totally
willing to change this, if that makes sense, to be more at the discretion, because it's very difficult, I think, the way it is right now anyways, but that it's more just the grade change using any criteria can be at the discretion of the instructor. Is that what you would?
If the grade changes at the discretion of the instructor, that would be outstanding.
Okay, thank you.
Before, I just want to ask you one quick question about the data.
Yeah.
Have you looked at all the data because you said you analyzed the data.
Yes,
looked
I've
for,
analyzed
for
data.
all things, so not just the grades.
I'm sorry, analyze, what do you mean?
For example, what's the demographic makeup of the AP classes?
The demographic makeup of the AP classes, I have not analyzed that. So I'm aware that, yes, we have a demographic issue, but what I'm speaking to is comparing my AP students who are in my class, who are in all the other AP classes, and looking at physics, which is not the easiest subject. If you look nationally, it's one of the worst scoring subjects. And I am able to take students, and the students in my class have an average grade of one score grade higher than all their other subjects, and they're not necessarily sciencey kids. I grew the program from 14 kids to 70. So we're talking about a substantial cross-section of the school, of the kids in AP. I get that we're not reaching all students. I mean, don't get me wrong. But what I am saying is if you look at students who are in AP classes and you look at what I'm achieving through the methods of mastery learning and through this type of opportunity that's available, that is what has enabled me to achieve the success rate. And I've actually want to go and consult with other teachers and help them achieve these results now that I've been so successful. And so this is just taking something away that I look at as a tool that can be effectively done. And why dumb this down to the lowest common denominator because some teachers are misusing it? Why not have an administrator work with that teacher and say, we're not really satisfied with the approach you're taking? It just seems like this cross the board. I know we don't want to talk. I think you get the sense. I'm passionate, I care, and I didn't know I was going to talk about this, and I'm highly disappointed in option A. Okay? And option B. And option B needs to have a modification to leave it at the discretion to, like I said, I'm a professional. If I'm not allowed to choose how I develop the grade structure, why even have me in the room? Might as well have a robot, and I could have my students build that. So that's it. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Wheeler.
Lane Wheeler?
Well, I will try to bring equal passion, but within 3 minutes. I would like to speak to the issue as Mr. Turnbull described this. I want to make sure that the board is completely clear that we're not talking about teachers misusing a policy. I think oftentimes you're finding, in my short tenure as president, the times I've been called in to discuss grade changes, it's usually been with an administrator and a teacher and a parent, and that group oftentimes doesn't have a clear understanding. I think most of the teachers, with 5 students having been in or attended the Santa Barbara school system, schools, I have a pretty clear understanding of most teachers have a very specific grading policy, and they stick with it. And oftentimes they're asked to bend that policy for a reason that's outside the scope of what happens in that classroom. And I would like to suggest, as a previous speaker did, that you will have hired a group, a very elite group of professionals, and you're charging them with the responsibility of coming up with these grades. And I think that they do need to have some discretion. I do think they need an overarching policy that guides them. But there are those circumstances that come about that provide the opportunity for something to be a grade to be changed. So, you've got professionals on the line, and I think we need to hear from them and trust them, and that the board policy should reflect that trust and that respect. So I would encourage you to look at that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Ms. Malikoff?
Yes, would you like to say something?
Yes. I would just like to, I raised a number of these concerns at our previous board meeting. My position hasn't really changed with the changes that have been made to the proposed policy because it doesn't change the underlying philosophy of option B. I would like to advocate for option A. I think that I don't think that this is an issue of whether we respect the teacher's performance or the teacher's autonomy or not, because option A allows for the teacher to make the entire decision. If the teacher thinks that the student deserves an A, then the student can get an A. If the teacher thinks that the student deserves a C, then the student can get a C. It doesn't mandate anything about how the teacher grades. It simply says that what the teacher grades on is going to be entirely contained within the class and the classroom structure, and not on an external factor. One of the concerns I have is looking at the cover sheet. It talked about how the purpose of AP is to ensure a rigorous college-level course. And I'm not sure how allowing students to get a higher grade based on an external test increases the rigor within the course. It seems to me that it allows the course to not necessarily have to maintain that rigor because the student has a second chance at it after the fact. It also seems to me that it creates unequal opportunity. Some teachers can choose to use this policy, and therefore their students would get an additional chance at a higher grade. Other teachers would choose not to use this policy, and their students would not get an additional chance at a higher grade. If I had a child in a class where a teacher was not allowing them that option, I think I would probably consider filing a discrimination suit against the district, because it's providing an opportunity to some students that it's not providing to others. I think it also, because of the unequal access to tests, we talked about paying for some tests. I'm a little. I talked to Mr. Turnbull, and I'm a little more comfortable with how that might be handled, but I'm concerned about students having to qualify for assistance. And we had talked about the fact that some students might not qualify and still not be able to afford the cost of the test. And I just think anything the district does that places academic achievement in a category that has a cost associated to it that the student has to bear is untenable, just on its face. I cannot support that. In addition, I think it minimizes the other factors in grading. I am a teacher. I expect my students to get a grade based on what they do in my classroom that includes more than just taking tests. It includes their attendance, it includes their participation, it includes their homework assignments, it includes a whole variety of factors. And in fact, we had talked about the fact that at a statewide level, in most areas, the state is moving away from single measure assessments. Okay? So to me, this minimizes the other aspects of teaching it, and it suggests to students that the rest of the class is not so important. What's really important is the test. I think that's a really negative, sort of distressing message to send to high school students. I also renew my concern that we are offering this privilege, if you will, to the highest achieving students in the school, and no other students get this option of increasing their grade after the fact. And again, I think that that is just absolutely not appropriate. Did you want to? No, you were okay. No. Go ahead.
I appreciate your comments very much. I come from 35 years at the University of California, where the Academic Senate has total autonomy over course content and the conduct of instruction, which means that that is the domain of the teacher. And the teacher's judgment prevails about grading. And if the teacher has evidence that arrives, evidence describing performance during the class, but the description, the grade, doesn't come until later, it certainly would be within the purview of the teacher to change the grade, and no one would question it. And after all, these are at the high end of our college preparatory curriculum, and they are courses that receive college credit. So from my point of view, the more like college courses they are, the better. I didn't take attendance in 35 years of teaching at the University of California, and I certainly never graded on attendance. If a student learned the material, they learned the material, and some of them could do it without coming to class. It made it hurt my ego a little bit, I thought my lectures were so sterling, but they managed to do it anyway. And I believe those norms still prevail at most universities. I was at Parents' Day at UCLA over the weekend, talked with some faculty, and that's certainly consistent with the school culture at UCLA. And I don't view, I'm going to address the question of whether this is a privilege that is extended only to the high achievers, that there's a discrimination issue here. There's no discrimination because everybody in the class is treated the same. And I'm not using the word classroom, but in the class of students who are in AP, it is a consistent policy within that class. There's no discrimination whatsoever. It is well within the purview of the school and of the district to allow teachers to have that discretion. And I see no problem with it. I'm going to, when given an opportunity, I would like to move to adopt the policy as written, deleting the second page in its entirety.
Except for maybe that last sentence?
Even the grade changes?
No, the district will provide a weighted grade for advanced placement courses
I beg your
regardless of
pardon.
whether students take the exam.
With the exception of that last sentence. Thank you, Mrs. Parker. I almost threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Wait, deleting which?
Deleting
the
option
whole-
A.
But I would delete
Reading
grade
option A and
changes
B?
using the above criteria shall be at the discretion of the instructor, because for me, that goes without saying.
Yes.
Would you like to make a motion?
Well, can I make some comment here also? And-
We can still, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to weigh in that those were the exact concerns that I had as I was reading through this. They were that I don't feel like it's up to the board to get to this level of participation in what goes on in an individual classroom. I do feel like a teacher's grading policy is something that's negotiated within their department. I would hope that there's consistency across the department. But I felt like this, especially option B, was too interfering. And I decided to take a look at what other districts were doing. I looked at the CSBA, at their online board policies from many different districts, and actually I couldn't find any district that had anything on this at all. So currently I would say, I don't know if there is any district that has a policy at the board level about this. They seem to be leaving it up to high school discretion. And so I agree wholeheartedly with what Dr. Noel was suggesting. I think it's great for us to have this policy that supports it and lays out how we support low-income students being able to take the test and that you get a weighted grade for it whether or not you take the exam. But I agree that it would be great if we could just remove option A and option B.
So would you like to make a motion? Because I agree with you also, and I would like to see this as a motion, so.
I'll make the
Oh,
motion.
okay.
I move to adopt the policy as written, except on option A is deleted, option B is deleted. The sentence grade changes using the above criteria shall be at the discretion of the instructor is deleted. The policy statement concludes with the sentence, the district will provide a weighted grade for advanced placement courses regardless of whether students take the exam.
And I'll second that.
Any other discussion? I just wanted to say that I thought that the AP classes are a very distinct kind of class where it's about the test, that they start the very first day practicing for this test, and it's unlike any other class, and students shouldn't take that unless that's what they're interested in, is taking this test. And it's really about taking the, if you're not interested in the AP credit, then there's other classes that they could take. And
Dr. Malikoff, you're suggesting that we really should not have students take an AP class if they don't want to take the AP test?
We're trying to encourage them to take it. So I would say that at the very beginning, students should know
I
that
thought we were trying to educate our students.
Absolutely. Why can't they take, I don't see the
So if students want to be
distinction.
highly educated, but they don't want to take a test, we should discourage them from that.
There are other classes to take. Why would you want to take this class if you didn't take
I might
it?
not want to, but I'm not suggesting, but I
and-
can't imagine
right.
that
They don't
I can
have,
speak
obviously,
for every other student out there.
I am not going to say they have to take the test. Obviously, I'm not going to do that, but I think
And
that.
the new policy does say,
I
make
kn-
it clear that it's a weighted grade.
I
So-
know, I'm not quibbling with the policy. I'm saying I'm really disturbed by what seems to be our philosophy about what these classes are. I think AP classes are classes that attempt and by and large succeed in teaching students at an extremely advanced level so that those students get are very highly educated in that subject matter. And to me, that supersedes any test that they might take. The test is important, I absolutely agree. But my role as a school board member is not to ensure that students take a test. It's to ensure that students get educated. And therefore, if students want to take an AP class and they don't want to take the test, I might wish that they were taking the test, but I'm happy that they want to get a strong education.
It is certainly a choice. I guess if somebody wasn't interested in taking the test, I would encourage them to take either a city college class or not an AP class. But it certainly is their choice. It's just a very different thing than most of our classes.
I think one of the benefits of public education is that students are allowed odd choices.
Oh, yes. Choice is good.
Yeah.
We agree on that.
But the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm concerned that I see this as discrimination. And I think, for example, when we say that it's not discrimination because everybody in this class, using the class in a broad sense, gets the same option, I think to me, that is somewhat a definition of discrimination in that people who are not in that class don't get it. It's a type of class discrimination. And the argument that if a student kind of stumbles in the beginning of the semester, they're hampered because the grade is cumulative, it seems to me that in every class we offer the grade is cumulative. So why don't students in general classes get to make changes in their grade after the class is over?
This policy, Mrs. Cordero, would not preclude that possibility.
Well,
this policy doesn't say a thing about that, and certainly implicit in my support for the policy is my belief, as Mr. Wheeler so aptly put it, that these are professionals and it's their professional judgment. No one is on the ground. No one knows the situation better than the teacher. You're a teacher. I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah.
That it is the teacher's judgment. If the teacher finds new information that warrant a change in the grade, I think that's the teacher's prerogative.
Well,
if the teacher discriminates in the exercise of that professional responsibility, that is another issue, and that certainly is a serious issue. Not one to be dealt with in an AP policy, but one to be dealt with by a department chair, and by in the context of disciplinary policy.
Well, as you know, I always support the teacher's autonomy, and in fact, I'm interested that this is the argument that's being made since most of us were on the board at the time that we removed a certain book from the reading list that some teachers wanted to use. And I argued that it should be up to teacher autonomy, and I was on the losing end of that vote. So I'm happy that we've now come to support teacher autonomy, but I don't think we should do that at the expense of fairness to students.
If I could just jump in here, I do want to point out that every teacher grades differently. Every teacher has his or her, biases and the things that they think that are important. And so if you could say that everybody graded exactly the same way, then it wouldn't be fair if somebody was doing it differently. But the fact is, they're all individuals, and your kid may be in chemistry with this teacher, and her kid's in chemistry with another, and do the exact same work and yet end up with different grades.
But the difference is, and I'm not sure why I'm not making this clear, or maybe I am making it clear. Just I don't know. The difference that I see is this is not just a matter of teachers grading differently. This is a matter of what they're allowed to do by policy or by lack of policy. Teachers in other courses don't have this option. No matter if they wanted it, they couldn't do it. So it's not just a difference of some teachers teach differently or grade differently. I totally agree with that. I don't think we necessarily have to have standardized grading, although we certainly try to have normed grading. But this is giving some teachers and therefore some students an opportunity that is not being given to anybody else.
I'm going to have to call the question. We are behind our time here, and so if we could have a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
So we have a vote of 3-1. Parker, Noel, Malakoff in favor, Cordero opposed. Thank you. Instead of going to E2.
Wait, I'm sorry, just as a quick follow-up to that, can I ask that we have a demographic breakdown of the AP and IB programs?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I believe Dr. Hayden is actually working on something very similar to that currently. I don't know when the completion will be, but yes.
Thank you.
We're going to skip E2 for right now because we were supposed to be on E3 at 8 o'clock. So if we can move to E3. Resource person is Michael Gonzalez.
Good. E3 is a public hearing and approval on Resolution 0708-11 regarding Williams' sufficiency or insufficiency of instructional materials for the elementary district. This is an annual hearing that we are required to conduct, and Michael Gonzalez, our Director of Compliance and Categorical Programs, will make the presentation.
Thank you very much. As you know, the Education Code, Section 60, requires that we annually conduct an instructional materials survey. In the elementary district, we're required to make sure that we have sufficient textbooks and that they are in use in the areas of English, reading, language arts, mathematics, history, social studies, and science. We conduct an annual survey of all of our schools, and we require them to submit to us verification that indeed, one, that they are using State Board of Education adopted textbooks, and two, that there are sufficient numbers of those textbooks, and three, that they're actually in use inside the classrooms. I'm pleased to report to you that this year we are recommending a sufficiency resolution. This is the first time in a couple of years that we've been able to recommend that to the board. We're now at the point in our elementary schools where every single youngster, regardless of instructional program, has access to a State Board of Education adopted textbook. The fiscal impact of that is that should we not have these kinds of textbooks, we're obligated to take immediate actions to correct that, to purchase the required textbooks. But it also permits us to continue to use instructional materials funding from the realignment program. And so the recommendation to you folks is that we adopt the resolution of sufficiency. The actual textbooks that are in use are an attachment to the report that you have before you.
Thank you. Sufficiency is good.
Sufficiency is very good.
Do I hear a motion?
Well,
sorry.
I want to ask a question. A recommendation is one thing, a certification is another. And basically the board is being asked to certify to the state that this is true. Are you certifying to us, or are you just recommending it?
Oh, you are very correct. We are certifying to our Board of Education based on our surveys of every single one of our schools that indeed we have sufficient instructional materials in the 4 areas that were mentioned. Yes, we are certifying to you.
Mr. Superintendent, are you with him on that?
I'm with him on that. We've gone to each of the schools. We have asked them directly, and they say these are the materials they are using.
And you believe that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because we've had this discussion for a couple of years, and you may recall a year ago, it didn't look like this. We had some schools that were holdouts.
But
I have since had to direct schools to get rid of the materials that they had and
Okay.
use the state-approved materials.
That's the reassurance I was looking for, Dr. Sarvis. I move to adopt the resolution. Somebody else was. I move to adopt the resolution as written.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. It passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we can go back to E2, although we are behind.
Madam President, I don't know, is it President, Vice President, what, pro tem?
Call me whatever.
We also did have a time certain for item E4, and there are members of the audience here to speak to that item.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I believe
That's
that makes
fine,
good
and I'm
sense.
happy to move on to E4. Thank you for noting that. So we'll move on to E4, approval of the plan to reinstate the serious habitual offender program, and our contact is, our resource is Michael Gonzalez. If you'll come back.
This is also a continuation of the earlier discussion we had. The board had approved the serious habitual offender program in concept, but wanted more information about the program and was particularly concerned that students be objectively identified, as I recall.
I thought the question was also, what will our role be in identifying, or not identifying, but helping these offenders?
You are correct. Essentially, the board asked us to investigate two aspects of our participation in SHOW. One aspect that you asked about is how would potential serious habitual offenders be identified? And on that memo that we provided to you, we have a response from Captain Frank Mannix, who indicated that as minors began to approach the criteria that I shared with you at the last meeting, you may recall that there are 4 different criteria for how minors enter the serious habitual program. As they began to approach the required criteria, they would be identified as serious habitual offenders. The more broad question you folks asked is, okay, so what constitutes rehabilitation? And in that memo, I provided 3 responses. The first response was from, again, the Santa Barbara Police Department. They indicated that, first of all, they indicated that each agency partner would be responsible for developing rehabilitation. The Santa Barbara Police Department indicated that for them, the 2 programs that continue to be their best interventions, rehabilitation plans, is participation in their Explorer program and participation in their Pell League activities. We went on and made contact with probation, and it turned out probation is the major partner in the rehabilitation of minors identified for the SHOW program. And I outlined the great number of support services that are available through the probation department. The team would rely heavily on the probation department, because if a minor was identified for the SHOW program, the only way to actually mandate participation in rehabilitation programs is through orders of probation. I also indicated to you that in addition to the counseling support services that the district has in current use for all students, should you authorize our participation, we would then begin to build what additional services are needed. When I share with you existing counseling support services, please understand that it goes everything from making sure that kids are in school. Almost all the data involved in almost all the studies involved in serious habitual offenders say, look, the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure these youngsters are attending school. That's paramount. But every single as you know, last year we received supplementary funding from the State Department to focus on at-risk youth. And part of what our counselors who were hired under that program are obligated to do is work with this population of students. In addition, I believe that on the 30th, we will introduce to you a number of initiatives responding to your concern several months ago about what else is in the works. For example, I will share with you that should it be approved, we will consider the creation of a new old position called a gang intervention specialist that would be assigned as of this morning, if the funding's available and you approve it, to 4 of our schools. The memo that I will share with you next month will talk about a parent education program. It'll outline a series of initiatives that the district has been working on since our last conversation. Nevertheless, I want to make the point very clear that the rehabilitation of minors identified for the SHOW program is the responsibility of every single partner. Again, I would ask you to authorize the participation of the district in the Serious Habitual Offenders Program.
Do we have any questions? Would you like-
I'd like to hear from members of the public first, if
Anybody
that's
else?
okay.
That's okay.
Karen Ju? Karina Ju? Did I have that right? Letter J? Someone answered. Lou.
Jew. Karina Jew. Okay. Good evening. I come to you as a member of Pueblo, as well as a former staff person to the Pro Youth Coalition, which was a broad-based community collaborative for the prevention and intervention of gang violence in this community in the late 90s. And I guess we're finding out, I guess, that you guys are looking at approval of the SHOW program a little bit late, so there's a lot of questions in terms of information that I wasn't necessarily able to find in the attachments. And so some of the questions that I had were there was some information in terms of, I think in response to a question about whether there would be any disproportion in terms of ethnicity and of the groups that might be identified within the SHOW program. And there was an example given from 1993 of sort of the demographic breakout. And I was wondering if, under the criteria, if there's any estimate at this point in time today, how many students would be identified under the SHOW program in the district, and what that ethnic breakout would be today, as well as the students who are identified under the potential SHOW category. And also, I wasn't able to find the 4 criteria for identification within the SHOW program. I was only able to see the response in terms of those who are identified as potential SHOW. Not knowing what the 4 criteria were for the SHOW program itself, I did have some concerns also about this issue of students being described as potential SHOW participants, which I guess has been defined as 1 or 2 arrests from meeting the 4 criteria. And my concern around that is that when we talk about the criminalization of youth, it's really about treating children as though they have participated in something, treating them as though they're a criminal, and so then they identify and become that. And so if we're talking, everybody in this room is 1 arrest away from being a felon. I mean, that's the reality. So if we're talking about arrests away, we're assuming that they are on the way to 1 or 2 arrests. And I think that coming from having worked in the intervention and prevention area with students, if we look at a student as being 1 or 2 arrests, I see them as prime for rehabilitation, prevention, and intervention programs, as opposed to prime for being treated in the same fashion as students that we've identified as serious habitual offenders. Not necessarily knowing all of what the criteria for that are, you know. So, and then the other issue was just about the rehabilitation and and I thought that I would like to hear, as a member of the public, a little bit more in detail. I think that if that's a primary goal of participation in that program, that those things should be very clearly outlined before entering into an agreement to participate in it. I think that when we were doing this work in the late 90s, which I think was actually a very successful time period, there was a broad-based coalition that included members of representing the schools, representing police, probation, representing the community, and community organizations that were meeting on a very regular basis with a strategic plan. And it was on the concept that if we're going to ask students, because I know that this has been initiated in many ways by gang-related violence issues, is that if we're going to ask students to not participate in things, that we have to provide alternatives and be upfront about what those alternatives are. And I feel like some of the, at least the information that's available to the public right now about that aspect is a little bit incomplete. I'm familiar with some of the, like the PAL program. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
This is the,
We may move you down.
the responsibilities of vice president are overwhelming in all domains, except one. Keith Terry.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing public comment on this matter. I share similar concerns with Karina Jew as to what the 4 criteria are, and I'm really at a loss to how we determine someone is approaching the 4 criteria. Is that, how do we weigh that? How do we determine, okay, you haven't reached the criteria yet, but you're a potential. That's kind of like, you know, a movie I saw once about future crimes. It's almost like identifying a criminal before they commit a crime. And speaking of it being identifying a criminal, how can we speak of criminals and speak of our children in the same sentence? As Karina mentioned, there have been programs that have come and gone to help this problem that we're having now with gang violence. I come here as a representative of the Santa Barbara Teen Legal Clinic, as a director of Project Excel, and as a board member for Y Strive for Youth. So I have a lot of involvement in the youth in this community, with the youth in this community. And most of the at-risk youth will not take part in police explorers or police activities, strictly because they have police in the title. Now, these programs are wonderful programs, and I'm sure they work well to help young children in prevention, but intervention, they don't do as good a job. And looking at the 5 agencies that are involved, I noticed there were no community programs involved, no mental health programs involved, no social service programs involved. So it seems to be law enforcement in the school district. If that being the case, it appears that the school district could now be entering into law enforcement. I think we should concentrate more on educating our youth as a school board, as a school district, than criminalizing our youth. I don't know if we want to take that step into law enforcement, if we have the expertise or understanding of what it entails. Nor do I think these agencies have the ability to properly rehabilitate a youth, because they're basically law enforcement. And that's their job. And they do a good job at doing what it is that they're trained to do. But to ask them to do something they're not trained to do, and to enter into that agreement with them. I also noticed it said that the cost impact is undetermined. We're already struggling as a school district. In the state, we're already struggling to educate our youth with the funds that we now have. We have lotteries and we have fundraising, we have all of these actions to try to help youth to do better in school. Why would we want to commit more funds to law enforcement to do a job that they should already be doing? Thank you.
Thank you. Was there,
This has no name, but it says Pueblo.
was there someone else from Pueblo that wanted to speak? Could you just tell us your name?
My name is Aideen Castillo. I'm a community organizer for Pueblo. And as a community organizer, I've had the opportunity to work with several parents, many of whom have been expressing concerns lately because of the lack of trust that they have with law enforcement agencies, right? As Keith and Karina both mentioned, I think there's a serious concern when all the agencies mentioned who are going to be collaborating in this are not community organizations. I think it brings serious questions to me when a lot of parents are turning to organizations like Pueblo to intervene on behalf of their kids because they clearly don't trust probation officers or other enforcement agencies. I feel that when you don't have those kind of services, that creates further detachment with parents and less interest in participating. And when there is that distrust, I mean, how much more encouraging could that be for their kids to be part of this? Most parents, when they hear the word police, they think, just from the conversations I've had lately, they think racial profiling, they think targeting specific students, and I think the school board should be there as an institution where parents could turn to, an institution that could provide trust for students, where I feel by participating in this program, that clearly would be broken, I think, to some extent. Also, if one of the incentives of being part of this program is to increase attendance, I feel that that should already be something each school should be working on and not be used as an incentive to be part of this program. I think that when we are speaking of potential offenders, I can think of personally, I have several cousins who I think could qualify under that when many efforts are being made by our families, you know, to steer our kids away from that track. And I don't feel that using this program would be any more reassuring for us. I think, if anything, that just creates a mindset of students as being tracked in the specific field and being specifically targeted in that area and less trust with school. I mean, that's already a problem in and of itself. So I would highly recommend that this decision on this be put off so that more organizations, community organizations, could have greater say in this. I feel that is not something that has been allowed, particularly with agenda items or amendments being offered on such short notice. So I would just urge you to perhaps put your decision off on this. So thank you. That was short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Davis.
Hi, my name is Nancy Davis, and I was formerly the director of Legal Aid Foundation and the Community Mediation Program. And for the last 11 years, I've been working with young people in a program called City at Peace. And I'm very familiar with what Keith and Karina were talking about the work that was done in a giant coalition of a lot of partnering agencies in the late 90s, which I think was very effective. And recently, and I feel really remiss that we haven't made a greater outreach to the school board and to the schools to be included in this planning, but we have been working in the North County for the last 4 years and in the South County for many longer years than that, but just for the past 8 or 9 months on something called the Restorative Justice Task Force. And I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the term restorative justice, but it's a term it's used to cover a lot of practices, including family conferencing, including victim offender mediation, including circles in schools. And it's the model that we've been looking at is a model that was started in New Zealand, which I can't educate you in all the realms of restorative justice tonight, but it was based on several guiding principles, and the principles were the first one, that the child or young person's age should be taken into account, with the idea that children, a lot of offending for young people is developmental and they will grow out of it. Criminal proceedings should be avoided unless the public interest requires otherwise and unless the child is an immediate threat. because labeling them as a criminal simply, a lot of times increases the criminal behavior. Criminal justice processes should not be used to provide assistance. We shouldn't have to label a kid as a habitual offender in order to get them services that they might need in the community. Families should be strengthened, which we all know, and we worked really hard back in the 90s. And children should be kept in the community if at all possible. And I just wanted to, I'm just going to share a couple things that there are other communities in this country who have, and states who have implemented restorative practices in schools, which I'm hoping we can get to here. And this is a program in Maine. I just happen to know a lot of people in Maine. And this is also programs in Vermont and New Mexico and Florida and in Minnesota. But the idea is that traditional discipline is based on a system of punishment and reward. It's not typically used as a teaching tool. It makes the school culture adversarial. It tends to support labeling of kids. They're either bad kids or good kids. And it's a bandage approach that doesn't really have long-lasting effects, and victims get almost nothing from the process. Whereas in a restorative, and I have these available, I can leave with you. Restorative discipline is cooperative, supports community building and a culture of mutual respect. It focuses on the behavior as a bad choice, but not the student as a bad person. And it's a measure that's used as primary, and it's the traditional approach of locking a kid up or, putting them on house arrest or whatever is used as a last resort, absolute last resort. And it gives misbehavior a context. The students see how their actions are affecting other people, and they're held accountable for it. They learn from it, and it reduces the amount of time eventually that's spent on disciplinary action because the root of the problem is dealt with. And it's just a so much better way to go, I believe, than labeling kids as serious habitual offenders. And believe me, we have probation officers who are dedicated to the restorative justice principles and been working with us right from the top. And the sheriff was so impressed with this that our sheriff has now sent, we've actually brought a man from New Zealand to train sheriffs and a lot of other community people. That's going on in Lompoc as we speak. And I'm sorry that you guys weren't invited, or if you were, that you didn't know enough about it. But I think we really need to, rethink this program, and I think that the serious habitual offender program is really the wrong approach. And I would urge you to wait. Let's try to implement something more restorative, and let's work with probation and with the police and the sheriffs to develop this in conjunction with a lot of other community agencies who are anxious to help.
I would appreciate if you would give us a copy of that. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Sean Talent.
My name is Sean Talent. I'm a organizer with Pueblo. I'm also an editor and youth adult mentor with The Shape of Voice, which you guys might be familiar with. I have also worked a lot with youth in our community, especially up at the City College, and a lot of the students that I'm working with have younger brothers and sisters going through the high school and junior high system right now. One of the things that I'm looking at when I see this, just as a response, like there has been gang violence, recent high-profile gang violence, and the community is really looking for answers at the moment. In the past, throughout the 90s, like Karina had mentioned, there was a really strong community presence with a lot of organizations working together to address teen issues and really provide alternatives for them besides gangs. Some of that was lost just due to lack of funding. Now that we've seen this violence again, a lot of community organizations are becoming stronger. Funding that had gone away in the past is coming back. The city council's more committed. We're seeing more leadership out of our community. Money is there for programs that hadn't been there for a long time. And those organizations are starting to step up. Right now, they're starting to come together. And there will be a community response to this. If you look at the number of nonprofits operating within Santa Barbara, we really like to respond as a community to the issues in our community. We don't depend on the government. We don't depend on the police. We work with the government and the police to provide that response. If you look at our crowd that we have here, it's really small. We don't have a lot of community organizations present. Part of that has to do with the fact that this information was not widely publicized. If it came out online 72 hours in advance, as it gets posted on the door 72 hours in advance, more community organizations might be here. And if we want a strong, coordinated response, it's going to have to include community organizations in addition to the school district, in addition to the police. And that's something that we are fully willing to do, is get all of those groups back together. If we look at, like Mr. Gonzalez had mentioned, that on the 30th there are other initiatives that are going to be brought forth, such as gang intervention specialists, such as parent education. It would be really nice if we could see some of what the other community organizations are looking at and how those all fit into the big picture. Rather than passing this tonight, we need to see what the entire program is going to look like, not just passing it one piece at a time. There's a problem if we just create a piecemeal program and throw enforcement as the first thing that comes through. It's unfairly labeling our kids. It's unfairly telling them that they are criminals. That there is not community support. It's the police are going to be the first ones here, and maybe there will be some money left over for your parents and for your community to be part of the response. So what we need to do is really delay this, get more community organizations involved, and make sure that this is used to build a strong community that can support the youth and can include the youth instead of just punishing them and labeling them and cutting short their possibilities. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Lane Wheeler.
Thank you again. At the risk of being up here too many times tonight, I will articulate for the constituency that I represent as the president of the Teachers Association. When this was first presented several months ago, one of the comments I made then was I didn't see a large presence of the educator in this policy. I'm disheartened to look at the policy again and read what the school district's response is in this program. While these are essential pieces, and I do commend that teachers should be doing these activities as part of their daily operation, especially given the population with which they may be dealing, I still believe that a significant piece and a very primary piece of this policy is yet to be developed. And even if there were a 0.5 that said teacher participation in this program will be an ongoing development piece, I would feel much more comfortable with it. That's not in here, and as I read these responsibilities, they certainly read more like a clerk's position as opposed to the educator's position. And I know, as a longtime educator in this district, that teachers have been often the primary source of prevention of students moving into gang activity or criminal activity. And I believe that it's inherent in any policy that be a significant stepping stone in the development of the policy. So I would encourage you again to make that commitment, to have the educator involved and have the role of the educator articulated more clearly in the policy rather than be included sort of accidentally. So thank you again.
Thank you.
May I address this issue? You've heard from a number of people who are known for their wonderful work with students, and I know a number of them, and I don't mean to disparage their work, and I hope it continues. And you're right, we need more of it. But what we're addressing in this is a critical need, and I think we need to take a step back and put it in the context with which it came to us, or came to us again. 2 children in this community died in the last 8 months. They were stabbed to death. They were stabbed to death and murdered by other kids. We met within hours of the first incident, and what we learned was that we have known stabbers on our campuses. But that's information that we're not privy to because they have records that are not our records, and they have probation officers. We're talking about kids who have already been arrested 10 times for one thing or another. And we need to know who these students are. We must know who these students are. There are a number of things we need to accomplish here. We're not talking about profiling students. We're talking about identifying the 20 students who do have serious records. And one of the criteria, as you'll hear, is that the students who have already had 10 arrests. And you saw in the response, identifying students who are potential show students or students who are within 1 or 2 arrests of those 10. So these are students who have 8 or 9 arrests already. And these are kids with serious problems who are a serious threat to our students and to our teachers. Our primary effort here is to bring probation into play on our campuses, and we don't get that right now. I'll let Mr. Gonzalez describe that in more detail. This has been effective in the past. It has not resulted in some disproportional identifying ethnically, but by knowing who the students are, by being able to work with the students and bringing the significant agencies to bear on the school campuses, we have been effective in the past, and this is a critical need to us.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. I want to share with you, I want to apologize to the board and to the community members present that this information that was shared with the board back in August when we first presented was not attached to tonight's presentation. I draw your attention to the section labeled Section 502, and I simply want to remind you that currently there are 4 criteria for being considered a serious habitual student. I'm not sure if we can enlarge it. Yeah. Okay. Enlarge that center section here, Dave. Thank you. I want to share with you that the 4 criteria include, number 1, has accumulated, a minor who has accumulated 5 total arrests, 3 arrests for crimes chargeable as felonies, and 3 arrests within the preceding 12 months. Number 2, has accumulated 10 total arrests, 2 arrests for crimes chargeable as felonies, and 3 arrests within the preceding 12 months. Number 3, has been arrested once for more than 3 or more burglaries, robberies, or sexual assaults within the preceding 12 months. Finding number 4, has accumulated 10 total arrests, 8 or more arrests for misdemeanor crimes of theft, assault, battery, narcotics, or controlled substance possession, substance abuse, or use of possession of weapons, or has 3 arrests within the preceding 12 months. I will share with you that youngsters, minors who would fall in one of these categories represent a serious threat to other students and to faculty and other adults in our schools. This system is designed to track. I shared with you initially back in August. It's first of all designed to track these students, these minors. It's also designed to rehabilitate. I also want to assure the board and the members of the public that this is only one aspect of 3 ways to address gang violence, youth violence. One way is suppression. There's no doubt about it. I shared with you back in August that the studies overwhelmingly say that if that's all you do, it will not work. I shared with you an LA study that supported that, and I continue to contend that if this is all we did, we will not reduce youth violence, gang violence in our community. That is clear. I also shared with you that intervention programs are required. I shared with you that prevention programs are required, and I apologize that the report is not available for this evening. I shared with you it will be available on the 30th. Please know that the district was part of the Pro Youth Coalition. At present, there are I hope the folks here understand that there are conversations underway that, for example, I know that one member of our board has been invited, as well as myself, to a community-based approach to intervention prevention. I do not want anyone of our public or the board to believe that we're hinging all of our youth efforts on the show program. I simply share with you that it's one very vital tool that we need to have immediately in our district. I would be remiss if I did not recommend to you the participation of the district along with the Santa Barbara County Education Office, the Santa Barbara Police Department, the Probation Department in this endeavor. We need this tool, but it's only one tool. All right? Thank you.
I raised some concerns about this before the board adopted it in concept, and in fact, I voted not to adopt it. I still have some concerns that the criteria focuses on arrests. So granted, it may be unlikely, but theoretically a student could not have committed any crimes and still be identified as a serious habitual offender, because it does not identify that they have to have actually been convicted of anything.
I will simply share with you that abuse is possible in any practice conducted by human beings. There is no evidence that when show existed in this community previously, that the concerns that we had about racial profiling or not properly identifying youth took place. It is a concern. We are all concerned. Will this end up as identifying brown students in a disproportionate number? The studies that we've looked at do not bear that concern. Second, this is not a policy. This is an agreement that 5 agencies are entering, all right? Third, I would share with you that there will be many opportunities for the faculty of the Santa Barbara School Districts to get involved with a number of different aspects in the area of intervention and prevention. This is not one of those areas. I will speak with you honestly.
Well, I'm wondering if, when we were looking at the truancy policy, which also works with the probation department, and we had a number of concerns raised by many members of the community over a period of a long time. One of the things that we did that I thought was a very positive step was we did bring in some community groups to work with us on writing and developing that policy. And I'm wondering if that would not be what some of the members here have asked, is if there might not be some community involvement in developing this policy as well.
My response would be that if you chose the district's if you supported the district's participation in this program, I would think it would be very appropriate as a partner among the consortium to recommend to the other partners, let's sit down and get some community-based organizations to take a look and help us with those issues that have been presented to you tonight. Yes.
Question.
I'm sorry. I have more questions. I'm just wondering if I should just keep going. Keep going. Okay. My other question is, we've talked about the need to identify some students who might pose a significant threat to other students and perhaps other staff on campus. And I'm wondering if it might not be possible to have that identification and have a relationship with law enforcement without entering into the show program.
I would suppose that such a thing is possible. I would not want to deny that. I would want to share with you in the same breath, take a look at the third criteria. Take a look at the identification. We're talking about someone arrested for 3 or more burglaries, robberies, or sexual assaults within the preceding 12 months. Do we want, as a school district, not to be able to identify minors in the Santa Barbara City school system, in the county school system, who have committed these kinds of crimes? Do we not want to know who these youngsters are and keep an eye on them, as well as providing them the services they and their families need? These are serious crimes, is what I'm trying to share with you. These are not simply, I was jaywalking.
Right. Well, that's number 3, but they could fall into any category.
Correct.
But also, again, I certainly do think it would be extremely important for us to know any students who had committed these crimes. These are students who have been arrested for the crimes. So we don't, even having them identified doesn't necessarily, we still don't necessarily know whether they committed them or not. But more importantly, I just refer to the previous question, which is, I agree with you that it would be helpful to have some of this identified. I was questioning whether it has to be done within the context of show, whether there might not be another more maybe restorative process, but certainly more inclusive process that would bring in some community organizations that are committed to working with the students in a non law enforcement environment, as well as working with the Sheriff's Department, the Probation Department, the District Attorney, etc.
I am sure that other tools will be developed that I hope prove more effective than the show program. I will share with you that this currently represents a tool that we're ready to go with.
Okay, and then my last question. I'm concerned, very concerned, that the part listed under school district in terms of what the school district should do does not seem to me to embody at least what I think of as rehabilitation. And I had hoped that we would see a much clearer explanation of what rehabilitation would be in this project. And I was under the impression that that was one of the reasons why the board only approved it in concept, was because we wanted to see more clearly what the rehabilitation would be. And so I'm quite concerned that I don't feel satisfied that we're seeing that.
I appreciate your concern. I will share with you again that it is the consortium's feeling that it is the orders of probation that have the greatest authority to make a youngster and his family get involved with rehabilitation. A school district can offer. We cannot require a student or a family to participate in our rehabilitation programs. We all know that. Probation department, on the other hand, through their orders, can do that. And so I would simply share with you that they would continue to be the lead agency in providing rehabilitation services. That is not to deny that the district has an obligation to develop other rehabilitation services as we identify youngsters and potential youngsters for this particular program.
Anybody else? Can I just ask a quick question, Dr. Noel? Okay.
You're the chair.
I'm interrupting you now. Who exactly in the school district would get to know this information? That who was the offenders? Would the actual teacher know, or is this a administrative thing where the principal only knows?
Those details still need to be worked out. However, we have existing precedent currently that the teachers of the youngsters are required to know, the counselors who work with these young people are required to know, the administrators of a school are required to know. There is that existing process currently.
Well, that's also state law.
Correct.
However, we don't get this information. We don't know who the kids are. We, the school district, do not get these police records.
Your mic.
We do not get these police records.
I'm sorry, so, Dr. Sarvis, when you said it's state law, if, I'm not understanding. If it's state law, how come we don't get it?
For the offenses we know about, we must notify teachers and
okay.
we must
Okay.
notify staff. These are offenses that are outside of our jurisdiction, and we don't know who the kids are. We don't know they've been arrested 10 times in the last 12 months.
Go ahead.
How many people are we talking about?
We believe that in the city of Santa Barbara and the schools operated by the county education office, it would be approximately 16 to 18 young people who will eventually be identified for this kind of program based.
You're talking about the whole county?
No, the city of Santa Barbara and, for example, the El Puente Community School that's in our jurisdictional area.
Okay, that's what you meant by the county.
Yes.
So basically on the secondary level, the whole South Coast.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm
How
sorry.
many?
16 to 18 young people.
What percent of the total population of our student body is that?
We are approximately 10,000 in the secondary district, and so
we're
it's
talking about a half of 1%?
correct.
So you're saying that this includes San Marcos and Dos Pueblos, or no?
Correct. It would include, yes.
So is the sheriff involved?
The sheriffs would be involved, though you did see that they are not a signatory member of the consortium. But yes, they would be involved.
I'd like to correct one misimpression. I think that we're overworking the term at risk because we talk about we use the word at risk to talk about kids who are on the verge of getting bad grades. And by that, if we have a continuum, those kids may be up here, but the kids who have already been arrested multiple times somewhere are below being at risk. It seems to me that there's a threshold that's been crossed, and I just wanted to make that observation. I'm concerned, and I really commend you, Dr. Sarvis, for the candor of your presentation and the sincerity of it. I would go just a little bit farther. There were 2 killings, and we know that there were numerous individuals who were complicit in those murders. And there have been very, very few arrests. The last time I asked the police department, there was only 1 person charged. Maybe I should call again, but and that was only in the first instance. In the second instance, when I asked them, no one had been charged. And I think, well, a lot of these kids are school age, and the thought that we have people who are potentially complicit in murder, potential accomplices to murder, and indeed murderers in our schools, and to learn from Dr. Sarvis that we don't know who they are, I find that beyond belief. It seems to me that we not only that we have a moral responsibility, and it was good also to learn that we have a legal responsibility, but we have a moral responsibility to know who these people are, because only in knowing who they are can we offer any measure of prevention, of proactive interventions to assure the safety and security of 10,000 students and many hundred teachers and administrators. And then I look at the numbers again, and I say I don't know what it means to talk about racial profiling with a population of 16. I don't know what it means to talk about the numbers proportionate to the numbers in the community. We have a community with 46% Hispanic and a smaller number of Asians and a small number of African Americans. I don't know, we start to cut it very thin. But the issue really isn't the ethnicity of this group. The issue is, do they meet the criteria? Whatever their ethnic background, do they meet the criteria? I find this completely reasonable, and I'm going to make a motion that we adopt it.
Well, before you do, I just have to say.
I made the motion, madam.
Oh, okay.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Now discussion. Go ahead.
I would just like to say we do very well know any of our students who have been convicted of murder. We do know any of our students who have been convicted of being an accomplice to murder. What we don't know is any of our students who might have been arrested, which is not the same thing.
Well, I would refer you to the broken windows theory, and you could talk to the chief of police in Los Angeles, who was one of the first implementers of it. And that among these people, according to that theory, you're going to find a lot of people who are the ones you're talking about. We don't know. We're not going to sit as a court. We're not going to try to do that. The issue is not, in my opinion, whether they've been convicted. I think that's a legal nicety and hair splitting. If someone has been arrested that many times, okay, if they've been arrested that many times, do you think there's a little smoke there? If they have been 10 total arrests, 8 more arrests, misdemeanor crimes, theft, assault, battery, 16 people in the whole South Coast we're talking about, and you don't want us to know who they are.
Okay, Dr. Noel, I've said at least 3 times that I do want us to know who they are. I don't want us to do it with the show program. I can't imagine how I could be more clear than saying 3 times that I think it would be a good idea to know who they are. But
only if they've been convicted, I gather. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if you would listen to what I'm actually saying, you would know that that's not what I'm saying. I have said that I think it's a good idea. I don't want to restate everything I've said, because if you wanted to know, you would have listened. But the issue that I have is that we are assuming that the students, first of all, are guilty. But beyond that, as I've said many times, what are we doing with them in this? We're not, there's no rehabilitation aspect to it. We don't know what the rehabilitation aspect is. The students who are identified as potential shows get put into this program too. They haven't committed a total of 5 arrests. They may be, granted, they may be at 3, okay? But again, that's arrests, not convictions, okay? And the program presupposes that they're going to commit another 2. I have some objections to it, but I think there are real reasons why we need to be involved in this. I just think we should be involved in it with people beyond just law enforcement.
And I would agree with Mrs. Cordero, but what I'm hearing from Mr. Gonzalez is that's the direction that we're headed. This is just one component of it, but I need to see what parts 2 and parts 3 are, because I agree. We're talking about such a small number. There are so many kids that are at risk that need to be reached by community organizations, and I would love to see other things put in place for those kids that are maybe on the path towards this. But I do think it's very important for our district to know who the kids are that are already here. I support the show program for that.
Then I think we should have a vote. Is that okay? Okay. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
So it's 3-1. Parker, Noel, Malakoff in favor. Cordero opposed. Yes.
I would just like to request that we do get the information that Ms. Ju
I would
requested
yes.
of what students would be, well, I guess now they will be identified under this program right now. We had the breakdown for what it was previously. I'd like to see what it is now. And it certainly seems to me that previously the numbers that we got, I may be wrong, were more than 16.
I believe that there was 22.
I'd like to just as a follow-up, to ask if this is within something you can accomplish, Dr. Harvest, some feedback to the board about confidentiality and how, what measures are taken under this program to protect how much confidentiality and how.
That's reasonable. Good.
Seems like a
Thank
good
you.
question, thank you. And I hope we'll hear again next week, right? We have another thing next week
Well,
on the
Correct.
other parts of this.
And can we just request that some of these community members and the organizations that they represent be informed and contacted and maybe even invited to participate in the discussions that we're having around these other policies as well?
We certainly can. We met actually at the CASA this morning and began that process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think it's time, I'm sorry to keep you here some longer, but I think it's time for a break, for a few-minute break. So we'll break for about 10 minutes. We're behind. So. To go slightly out of order here still. I'd like to, if no one objects, I'd like to go on to E5 because we have people here. We don't have anyone here. Do we have anyone here for E2? No. So we have E5. Approval of submission of application for career technical education facilities funding to reserve matching funds for DP's Engineering Academy, and our resource person is Mr. Hetyoung.
Opportunity, there we go. We have an exciting opportunity to expand the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, and I believe that Mayor Abushair is part of the presentation tonight.
Yes, he is. He can step up anytime. On July 10th, the board gave approval for fundraising for this activity, and at the same time gave approval for a mayor to submit to the California Department of Education a package to set aside funds for career education. On October 2nd, we were notified that with a congratulatory letter that Dos Pueblos, in fact, Amir's package that he submitted from Dos Pueblos had received a score of 151 out of a possible 170 points. As part of the board item, I've attached the address of the website for a complete listing and also a hard copy of the listings for our area, so you can compare the applications submitted by Dos Pueblos compared with other schools. There's an excellent chance that this will receive funding. The next step in the process is submit a request for application of funds, which is a Form 5010 for the State Allocation Board form, to the Office of Public School Construction. Typically, we are not required on forms asking for matching funds or a reservation of funds to have a specific board action. However, for these funds, as part of the application process, they do want a specific board action approving the application for the reservation of funds. So a recommendation or approval is recommended. Amir?
Yeah. So the grant that I applied for, as we remember, we had this conversation. I think one of you said, what's the chance that you're going to get it? And I said, I don't think, that many people are going to apply and be serious about it over the summer. And a lot of people, more people did apply than I thought, but it still was good to get in on this first round. And so we definitely, I would say it looks like we're definitely going to be funded. I mean, that would be the way I would frame it, because I have contacted the people at the state and I have a sense of the allocation of money available and where our score lies. I thought we were going to get a big, someone's going to come to my door with a big check and say, hey, you won. And it was actually, they dragged it out for about, a week of me calling back and forth trying to find out exactly what the score even meant. And based on just looking at the total funds being allocated and the way they're trying to do it, it looks like I said, it's with certainty that we will be funded. What this form is to just effectively apply to find out what the number is that they're going to give us. So we applied for $3 million with a $3 million match for a total of a $6 million building. And if they approve our package, which I believe that that's not really I believe, the scope of the project has already been approved. So it's really just has to go to the state to have them say, the scope's been approved already, and now we're going to fund this scope. And assuming that the square footage and everything checks out, we should receive that dollar amount, and then we would need to go match. This is an opportunity for us to go out and try to have this building at half cost, and there's no contingency upon the district to match this money if we are basically applying to have the opportunity to forfeit is really the way it is. I mean, I don't want to put a negative spin on it, but if we don't raise the matching money, the money goes back to the state. There's nothing binding. So there's several opportunities on this form that we're submitting that says if you don't meet this, the money goes back to the state. It really, like I said, it's an opportunity for us to try to do this. With the worst case scenario is we forfeit the money back to the state, which I obviously hope does not happen. But I just want you to understand there's no binding agreement with the district on this. You're really just saying we approve the idea that we want to have this facility and we want to get it at half price, and we support the academy and its goals, and the state supports our goals. So the plan that I submitted to you, I rewrote it and made it, longer and more comprehensive, addressing all the issues of growth and the things that people had brought up, you guys had brought up, and also my board. So that's kind of where we are now, is we're just going to the next step of how do we raise this matching money so that we can make this happen in our community and really advance the educational opportunities for all students. And that is one of the important things. It is in all students. That's what we're trying to do. 400 kids at Dos Pueblos High School, somewhat of a magnet environment, with the open enrollment policy of the district, and really try to give everybody this hands-on education that really adds the relevance to the whole academic experience by having this hands-on component that is so sorely lacking, in my opinion.
Before we ask you any questions,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
This is
Appreciate it.
wonderful. This is job well done. This is amazing. I do have a couple questions, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
That's no problem.
First of all, if you raise part of the money, are you still then entitled to that matching of that part? Or you're not sure?
It's not totally clear. I would say that we would need to try to stay as close to within the scope of the project, and I think we could pare down the building and still demonstrate the scope. It doesn't look like they really micromanage that. What it looks like is that if you spend less money, then you only get to keep. They audit at the end effectively. So let's say we build a building for $4 million and we feel that we've kept within the scope, then they would take the $1 million back and we wouldn't need to match that. But I think we can't go too far or we start to lose what the educational plan and scope of the building was, which was really to provide all these, different facilities that would meet these needs. So there's a point of kind of no return where I say, we can't do that.
Do you want to describe your building to us?
The building, so it's a 11,000. The proposed building is an 11,000 square foot building. It would have a fully functional machine shop with welding and wood shop capabilities. It would have an electronics lab so students could learn electronics fabrication, electronics development. So basically pre-electrical engineering and electronics technician area. A mechanical engineering lab so students would be working on looking at stress and strain and bending and bridge building and that type of thing, and then a computer lab that we dedicated to computer programming, computer science, software development, CAD, solid modeling, so drafting, all of that type of thing, design engineering. So the idea is really a comprehensive manufacturing design facility to support the robotics, which you have seen as the capstone project, but really to address the fact that we have a chasm right now between the capstone project and then what we're doing at the beginning. We're basically balsa wood and popsicle sticks, and then suddenly it's, hey, we're going to go to the moon. So we're really trying to make a continuum of education, and the facilities that we currently have don't allow for us to address any type of continuum. It's a step function. It's we're here, and then now we're building robots like the professionals do. So we want to address that and offer more classes, and really again even offer classes to just the general population. If the building and the periods will support it, we could offer classes that would allow us to backfill from students in the general population. When I say general, not Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy students. I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking like a prison or something. But just the general students would be able to come in and backfill those classes. So if we offered a course, for example, in machining, we could maybe have 20 kids in the engineering academy in that, but maybe the machine shop, because we're running 4 classes in that, maybe we only have 3 classes worth of students, but we've got someone who's there for 4 periods, and we could offer that as an alternative opportunity for students. So the facility will really allow for some very state-of-the-art, education, career technical education, which is really what we're trying to move toward. Really, like I said, get the relevance back in the classroom, and it's been missing, and the vocational ed has been chopped, and now really with the career technical education, it's got a new name and people are feeling better about it. It's really
back.
A lot of it's the same thing, but I think there is this connection really. How do we take the vocational and how do we take the academics and tie them together and let the kids see the relevance? So
That's great. So the money would include all those machineries except for the computers. Is that
Yes,
what I heard?
with the exception of the
And
computers. The computers are not a durable good as per the grant, so.
But everything else is.
Everything else would be in there, would be
That
considered
is
in there.
terrific. We need is a engineering company in town that would maybe want to use their, maybe sell, give us some money for their name, and we'll put their name on their
We're
on the
hoping
building.
to do that.
Something like that.
We have addressed this issue. Now, I haven't addressed it with you specifically, the board. I know that you really are the final say on naming rights, but based on, well, to some degree, but based on past precedent, it's been, there are naming rights available for large contributions, and we're working within those contribution amounts that we've seen be, appropriate for naming rights, and that is something that is on the table that we're addressing. So.
Excellent. Sounds good. Now, other questions? I've been taking over here.
If I could respond to a question that Dr. Malikoff raised about the funds. We're asking for a reservation of the $6 million. We now have to design a building that fits the $6 million project for construction and non-construction and equipment costs. That has to receive final plan approval by the Division of State Architect 1 year from the time that the State Allocation Board approves the project. So we have our work cut out for us to get that design done into DSA and approved. And once that building goes out to bid, if it comes in over, they're not going to give us any more than the $3 million match. If it comes in under, then they will take a percentage and reduce their $3 million match appropriately based on what they feel the total project amount should be, not necessarily just the construction amount, but they will pare down proportionately.
At least you have the stuff inside that adds a little bit of flex to it.
Well, if it costs less, that's not a bad thing. We can
no.
achieve the goal. So, well, in addition to that, so I would say that in addition to that, we have created a nonprofit foundation, 501c3, to support this. And Sandra Seal is here, and she might want to just say, yes, please come up. And she's the president of this organization and has students in the program.
Yeah, I want to put a face on the fundraising end of this. I'm Sandy Seal, and I'll give you my credential. I have 5 children. And I have a daughter who graduated from DP 2 years ago. I have a daughter who graduated from San Marcos last year. My son is a junior at DP in the Engineering Academy. I have a daughter in 8th grade at La Colina and another daughter in 6th grade. So I have children in the pipeline, so I might actually get to benefit from this in the future. But anyway, Mr. Shayer sent home a letter first week of school explaining that he had written this grant and that he would be needing, if he got it, he would be needing matching funds from the community. This is a similar setup to what happened with the pool at DP. I mean, not in the funding. I know that was funded slightly differently, but just in the idea of having community members come together and raise the matching money. So there was a meeting, and with the parents that came at that meeting, we started this 501c3. It's the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy Foundation, DPEAF. And we have a wonderful website now, www.dpeaf.org. So everything that we have to date is actually on that website. So we have 7 parents as a board. We're fully incorporated as a nonprofit. And we are committed to raising the matching funds in the next year, I think in 12 months. We've already had a lot of people come through. We had a vice president of Google a couple of weeks ago come through and visit the program, and he was very excited. So I think we're off to a really good start. We had a meeting for all of the parents in the academy. A letter went home. I think you have 132 students, and we had 100 parents show up, which I think, in the public school world, in my experience, that is huge. And in 1 month with that group, we've raised $40,000. So I think, there's a lot of enthusiasm. People really want to see the program grow. They know that he's turning people away. And, there's tremendous support for this. So like I said, I just wanted to introduce myself and meet you all. And I hope I get to come in and see you again about this.
Some really exciting news. So.
Yeah, I have one big chair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, that was, you sort of addressed my one question, which is how long do you have, how much time do you have to raise this money? Is it 1 year?
It's, again, with this whole process, there is some ambiguity to it. One of the aspects is we have to have our plans approved by DSA by October 31st of 2008. So which means we have to have paid for plans, and we're working out right now what is the cost of paying for the plans. That's what gives us kind of the stay, if you will, till the October the 31st. Does that make sense? So basically, when we need to get those plans approved by then, and it really is working with the district and working with our group and finding out, how much are those plans going to cost. The plans are really what are required. Once those plans are paid for and approved, then we really there's a certain amount of time before we need to actually break ground. So I guess ultimately the way we're looking at it is if we believe that we're going to try to do this no matter what. So we want to do it for half price. I mean, that's the goal. If we do pay for the plans and we aren't able to use it now because we can't raise the money quickly enough, we don't look at it as that we're throwing away the money in the plans. Now the plans exist and we can go forward. That's not, again, the goal. Once those plans have been paid for, though, that's coming out of the matching money. So we're going to have to front that, because if we don't get to completion, then the state won't give us our money. So we would effectively eat it on the plans, but the idea would be that our plan is to go forward no matter what. Is that clear? So that buys us that time, and then we would get the funds, and then if everything works out, it's all fine.
Typically, the Office of Public School Construction gives you 18 months from the time they approve the funds and you have the plans approved to start construction. They've not, in the case of CETE projects, decided or given us any guidance yet as to that same timeline is going to apply here. So I would say that once we have plan approval, then the State Allocation Board would actually grant the funds from the reservation. Typically from that time, you have 18 months to have a signed contract in place and approved by the board, which means that you need a board agenda item probably in 17 months, because after the board approves the contract award, then you have to go through and get your contractor to bring in all his documents and sign the contract. So 1 year from now, I don't think it's critical that they have 100% of their match. I think we'll find out a little bit more as we go along, and hopefully we have that same 18-month period to be under contract.
And what stage is the planning now?
We're the architect and myself, Carl Mayrose, Amir, and members of the fundraising committee met on site, and Joe Wilcox from Kruger Benson Ziemer is submitting a proposal for preparation of the plans. We've not yet received that proposal.
And that will be paid for by you or
by fundraising?
By fundraising. Do you have no Measure V money left over?
No. We will be bringing a Measure V update to the board either on the next meeting on the 30th or the meeting after, and the board already has a priority list. The board is free to change that priority list, but most of that money is earmarked towards ADA requirements.
And there's no more matching money coming or anything like that on Measure
Building
V?
fees? Developer fees?
Right now, per the board, we have directed Kruger Benson Ziemer to develop plans for the classrooms at San Marcos High School, the replacement of the portables. We are currently in the process of establishing new construction eligibility as a 50-50 match for that project. If we do not qualify for 50-50 match new construction fees, then we come back to the board and ask for additional discussion and direction.
I would find it, developer fees comes up every so often, and I look up at my little timeline on where do we stand on the money, and it's always blank. Wouldn't it be useful if we had an occasional report on the flow of funds to developer fees and what kind of options the board may have at its disposal?
We do give an annual report to the board.
Well, how about quarterly?
If we had more staff, I could do
at
reports
this very
more often.
moment, wouldn't it be nice if we could say, well, it looks like developer fees are in the pipeline that are not allocated right now, and we could say something meaningful and supportive to this project.
Something else to put on a agenda.
That's entirely a topic that would be appropriate for discussion with the board. Like I say, the current recommendations that the board has approved on their priority list are a certain amount for the kitchen remodel at Santa Barbara High School and for matching funds for the classrooms at San Marcos High School. And
You said that about Measure V. That is also developed?
no, no.
That priority list, as I recall, was a Measure V priority list. Are you talking about another priority list?
I'm sorry, but I think again, we're off our
Yeah,
agenda
talk-
item. We're talking about the priority list for Measure V.
We'll talk about it next week.
What do you mean we're off the agenda item? We're talking about potential sources of funding for this project.
Well, but the agenda
I don't
item.
mind a strict constructionist of the Brown Act, but this is ridiculous.
But I thought the agenda item was to approve the application, not to talk about how to fund the project.
And the funding of the project is not relevant to the approval of the application?
No.
Come now, Ms. Cordero.
Well,
Well,
I think it would be interesting to hear, but I think it's something separate. We need to hear that again. We're going to hear next week about Measure V, but maybe we need to put on the agenda something about the developer fee and find out, whether, because we have now a couple of years for this, so, or at least a year or so. So it's something else to think about. Does that work?
I would just say that I think this is a really exciting opportunity. We really are getting potentially $3 million for free from the state to advance our career technical education. And while I understand that there are a number of things that need to be funded, if it is possible to investigate some source of funding, especially to help us in this interim process of establishing, the plans, et cetera, it would be obviously outstanding and it would enable us to, go forward more effectively, not feel like we're under the gun to just try to reserve the money. So I appreciate your time on this. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll move to approve the submission of the application for career technical education facilities funding to reserve matching funds for Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, Dos Pueblos High School.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
And I'd
Passes
like to-
4-0.
I would like to reiterate my request that we get a report soon on possible developers' fees and, how much is coming in. They come in how often? All the time. That's what I thought.
New construction.
And so we could see the flow and what are the already prior commitments of those fees and how much possibility there would be to for the board to consider devoting some developers' fees to this project.
Mr. Hit-Young, when was the last time we got that update?
No. It's a little bit over a year ago, and
Okay.
I am late on bringing you the annual report. The answer to the
Okay.
previous question was developer fees come in daily when contractors pay their fee to pull a building permit.
Well,
Okay.
it's been a budget that I've never felt
That's a-
any sense of
Thank you.
control over.
We'll
bring
go.
more information.
We'll come back. E2, we're going back to E2. The second reading and adoption of new board policy such and such on the IBC program and exam. And the resource person is?
Paul
Paul
Turnbull.
Turnbull.
Well, as I mentioned previously, this is directly related to the policy you revisited with AP. It's prudent that we look at the IB policy now because the IB Academy is now thriving at Dos Pueblos High School. It's important that we first recognize it in policy, and there's a new twist on it in that the language on the second page was meant to mirror whatever happened with AP. So you have two tasks before you really. A recognition of the IB program in the board policies that have gone unrecognized previous, and now the recognition of both option A and B and whether or not you would like parity with the AP program, and I'm making the assumption that you would.
Well, let's first talk about the first part. Is there any comments about the policy itself about the IB program, the first page? Does anyone have anything they want to add, subtract? No? Okay. Then now let's go.
I would make a simple observation that IB doesn't purport to be college courses, so that any kind of language about college level, it's of no consequence. But
It says pre-university courses.
This language was taken directly out of their.
I see that.
Right. I tried to write this in exactly the same format the AP policy was written to make sure there was as much parity as possible.
Then do I hear, rather than have the same discussion again, do I hear a, not that it wouldn't be enjoyable, but do I hear a motion?
Wait, are we, I just wanted to question the language. Were we saying they aren't college courses or they aren't college level courses?
It depend, well, Dr. Noel, which
Oh.
particular?
Because it does say college level.
It does
So
say
we
college.
could remove that college level, just that rigorous courses be offered at each high school?
I just
This one?
changed that college level to,
Oh, it's
Yeah.
funny, because there's a pre-university course,
Rigorous
and so,
courses.
it- yeah, I didn't see
and
that
then
one.
down in the next
Top of the
bottom
third
line.
paragraph,
Would you-
is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
but
you-
the
I'm
next to
sorry,
bottom
where?
line, too.
The bottom, I'm looking at the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Good.
It's
I
two
have it in the
places.
first
Yeah,
line
it's
of
in the first line in the third
and the
paragraph.
Second to the last line on the page.
Wow.
Well, it's
You see?
there, and it also says in the very last
Right.
words, at the college level.
Right, we took out both of those, two things. And then, it's funny, because at the second paragraph, it says pre-university course.
Well, may
Which
I,
makes more
may I
sense.
interject briefly?
Mm-hmm.
This mirrors exact language from the AP policy, so we'll have to go back
Why
to the
does-
AP policy, well, because,
No, it's okay for the AP policy.
It's okay for the AP policy, this will be different.
How
AP
so?
policy is
IB.
supposed to be college level. We're saying this isn't necessarily supposed to be
the
college.
the IB program is college level. It's recognized on par with AP through
But do you
college
get-
admission offices.
Do you get college credit for it?
Yes.
You do get college credit?
You
for
get college IB, yes, at the same level. So there is a pass fail with AP 3 and
Thank
above.
you.
There's a
Okay.
pass
Never
fail with
mind.
IB,
Cross.
the top level. And so
Didn't know
actually, this might help illustrate. So if you look at the way the option B is laid out,
Mhm.
for example, you have it's a top score of 7, not of 5, and so the pass fail actually occurs at 4, and so that's why it's a holistic grading scale. So 4, 5, or 6, 7, and
Didn't know that.
in fact, when Dave Cash originally proposed the IB Academy and the curriculum within, one of the things he made sure to mention was that college admission officers recognize this on par for the same credit as AP classes. In fact, there's a growing percentage of colleges across North America that accept this as college credit.
Okay,
Okay, so we take the back in,
put back college level.
and do I hear a
I
motion?
move to adopt it exactly as the
So we're taking out the,
AP.
taking out the back page.
Taking out option A and option B.
So the
and-
district will
and the-
provide.
And the sentence grade changes
Yes.
using the above
Same as-
criteria.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Wait,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought we were going to have discussion.
Oh, you want discussion? Oh, we already
I-
did that, I thought, but okay.
About this?
Well,
I'm sorry. I just want to reiterate my objections to this. They're the same as for the AP policy that we adopted. And I'm again concerned that this demeans the value of the class and places too great an emphasis on the test.
okay. I think we're,
I just have one quick question about this. When do IB results come back?
That's a good question. The general time frame, I believe, is the same as AP. They have to travel farther, and there are actually different assessments that go in different directions. The final exams, for example, go to Cardiff, Wales, and then are reported back. If you're a diploma student, there are various ways in which you enroll in IB. If you are a full student, diploma student, and you write the extended essay, the essay travels to different points of origin in the world. So it really depends on when it comes back. When I was an IB English teacher, for example, the extended essays went to Mexico City and were summarily lost for about 3 months, and then refound, and everything worked out just fine. But thank goodness.
interesting. Okay, we've had a motion and a second.
I take back my support for this.
Well, can I ask just one real quick question then to follow up on that?
Yes.
Do students have a certain time period within which they have to take the test?
The IB exam?
Yeah.
Yes, it follows the same time frame as the AP exam schedules.
Okay, but I mean, if a student, for example, doesn't take it they finish the class this year, they don't take it, they can't come back and take it next year, can they?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay, so it has to be within that time frame.
Correct.
Okay.
That is a difference in that these are linked to classes.
They are. They're exactly linked to
AP
classes. They're related to your ultimate grade. So they're very content based.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
No.
So it's 3-1. Parker, Noel, Malakoff, voting yes, and Cordero voting no. We are now back down. Oh my gosh, are we late here? E6. This was brought to you by me. A resolution on the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind. Although I did not come up with this particular resolution, and maybe I could ask, where did this perhaps come from?
We went looking for the current resolution that had the backing of most of the organizations, CTA, AXA, CSBA, and I believe CSEA was in there. And this is the resolution, excuse me, I've lost my place on it here, but this is the resolution that, in the end, asks that we urge Congress to review and address the necessary amendments to the No Child Left Behind Act so that schools can successfully implement the act.
This is very similar to the, also to the resolution adopted by the National School Board Association, which I looked up online, except for one small little change, if I could add a change to it. At the very end is that resolve that copies of this resolution be sent to Congresswoman Lois Capps. And I had a little small correction here in the next to last paragraph. It just says now, therefore, just cross that out because it says it on the next one. Says it twice. Just a typo.
Well, it seemed, it's like innocuous.
Yes. A bit.
Like Congress needs to be asked to.
Well, we do what we have to do.
No, I understand, but I mean, it's already so well discussed in the press that Congress is certainly going to take action on No Child Left Behind. So,
Well, no, this is
I have
to.
I have no quarrel with
Okay.
it. It's just,
There are actually this HR 648 is rather vague, and no, they're reauthorizing No Child Left Behind, but they're also making some changes. And I printed that out if anyone is interested in some of the changes they're considering. Although you never know, it goes from being a bill to when it gets passed, it may end up being slightly, different. And very different. So, but it's an outline of. It looks like interesting ideas and good ideas, and I just thought we should be among those who are supporting them.
Move to approve?
Do I hear a motion? Oh, second. I'm sorry, second.
Is that with the addition that copies be sent to Lois Capps?
Yes, move to approve as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So it's 4-0, everyone saying yes. We get to move on to board action on student expulsion case number 060768. Before I get to that, let me say this. Since we're at E7 on student expulsions, and I said that we would return to C4 about our announcement of closed session action, I want to say here that I want to report that the board discussed conducting a supplemental hearing on matter involving expulsion case 0607-87 on October 30th, and the scope of what will be considered during that hearing. And I will entertain a motion that we proceed to hold the hearing on the basis discussed in closed session. This was,
so moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Oh, you're abstaining.
Not really abstaining, I'm
Recluse.
recusing myself.
So 3 ayes and 1 recusal. I said that right. Okay, now let's move to the expulsion case 0607-68. Do I
I
hear a
move-
motion?
Okay. I move that we refer this case back to the original hearing panel for further consideration of the case. Or a rehearing.
Reconsideration.
A reconsideration of the case.
When we say original panel, does that mean it has to be made up of the original members, or can we just call it administrative panel?
Okay, I'll just say the administrative panel. Yes.
I second that as it's changed.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? No. 4, the vote is 4-0. Okay, we're moving along at last. We're into the conference agenda, although it is an hour later. We have a report on transfer students into the elementary and secondary district and the cost to the district, and our resource is Robin Swatsky.
Robin Swatsky will deliver this, although some of the information is also owned by Paul Turnbull.
Right. And both of us had help from the special education department, and the charts that you received are actually from that department. I'll start out with the first, if your attachments are in the same order that mine are, we have just the inter-district transfer agreements, the two charts that show, this one up on the screen is the secondary, which shows this year as of October 9th, 368 students, and you can see the where the students are coming from. These are all coming to Santa Barbara School District. This does not show students from our district going out. It's just the students that we're receiving. And of course, the open alternative is just they have the 7th and 8th grade, so it's a small number. Out of the total enrollment of 10,209, the transfers here represent 3.6% of that. On the elementary, the next.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can I
Sure.
just ask a question? Do we know how many students are going out? Do we know that kind of number?
We could get that, yes. We weren't asked to have that for
No.
this report, but Anna Ryerson up there in our educational services or instructional, what is it called exactly?
Instructional
Students,
services.
Instructional services, she has all of that. Some of these, the number here is accurate, but what happens throughout the year, sometimes these transfer agreements kind of roll in. So this is by far the bulk of them, but there, if I checked again, like say in March, there could be a slightly different number, but this is pretty accurate. On the elementary then with 286, I do want to note, I don't know if you recall from last year, I looked up in 06-07, we had 342 transfers, which is a difference of 56 students fewer. And
Any
out of
idea
our,
why on that big drop? Just
not quite sure why.
Or more, where did the drop come from in any particular place?
I don't know that. I could compare by looking at the two charts and seeing exactly where the differences are. This report was so big with a lot of other stuff, I didn't go to that much detail. With our enrollment of 5,639, those transfers in the elementary district represent about 5% of the total population.
when you say that total enrollment of 5,600,
Including
that's including
charters.
the charters, but this doesn't include the charters.
Oh, you know what? You're right.
So
When I
what's
did that quick, yes, I would have to look at I'd have to get the enrollment to be able to get that. I do have the transfer numbers for just charter, but I don't have in front of me the enrollment.
So it's actually a larger percentage because
Exactly.
about
Although
1,000
Peabody
students.
is on here. It's just
Peabody
Cesar
because
Chavez.
it's boundaried, so it's Cesar Chavez and Santa Barbara Charter. Okay.
Right. That's a very difficult, we can find where they're coming from our schools, but, and we can chart all of that. We can
No,
find.
it just would be interesting
yeah.
to take out the, what are we talking about, 400 students, and get the slightly more accurate percentage of total enrollment.
Exactly. Yeah, I apologize. That's exactly correct. I did that when I was sitting here earlier in the meeting, because I thought, well, that would be interesting to note.
It is interesting.
Any other questions on that piece? I mean, I have revenue and all that kind of stuff, but I don't, you know, it's just ballpark figures of, you know, you just apply the revenue limit to that. But then, of course, you have to take away what the cost of teachers would be and facilities and all of that.
Right.
Okay, if there's no more questions on the numbers, then should we go on to the special ed transfer piece, which was the bulk of the report? Okay, up on the screen is the elementary total, and this is not including the charter schools. And the way this was put together, it was taking, as across the top, you can see all of the different services that are applied to special ed students. And the resource specialist program, as far as a teacher with that, that's taken just as the average teaching, the cost of an average teacher, kind of a approximate. So we didn't go into Adams and see exactly what that teacher costs and divide it up by the number of kids and all that. Some of the students, of course, have different services, so you can't really add it up. And I mean, there's no way exactly, like 2 students served, and they could those 2 students, in the case of McKinley, for instance, there's 2 students served that are transfer students. Those 2 students one is in a resource program, one is in a special day, one of them has counseling, one has speech, could be the same one. I mean, that kind of thing is, you really can't add it up. The shared, on the far right-hand side, the shared piece is a shared aid. So in a classroom of several students, the aid time, the aid time within like the resource specialist program is there. The individual, third in from the right, the individual instructional aid, that is a person for a student per the IEP. You'll note there's some high numbers there, particularly in one of our schools. I'm right on the, coming in from the individual instructional aid.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
I'm just kind of noting the large numbers. You'll notice on Open Alternative, we have 11 students who are transfer students. 4 of those students have individual aids, one-on-one. And that's per their IEP. That's a legal requirement. It's a large sum of money, though.
But presumably there are in-district students that are very expensive as well.
Exactly.
This is just
Oh,
pointing out
yes.
that they're out of
Right,
district. Okay.
right. As you know, and I think Dr. Sarvis mentioned it earlier, the encroachment in special ed is quite large. This is just showing the transfer students, inter-district transfer. I did get, what I did on this front page, we'll go to the charter schools in a few moments, but if you add within the elementary schools, there's the elementary non-charter, there's 43 students served, and in the charter schools, there's 20 students served. So 63 total students in the elementary out of the total transfers that are on that chart, and that doesn't include those charters. That represented 22%, but I think that's an inaccurate number now that we know that chart doesn't have all of that, but I do have it correctly for the secondary. Is it okay to go to the next page with secondary? Or do you have a question on the elementary, or just kind of how the chart was?
Given, this is kind of maybe a little bit.
There's a lot of
opinion here, but
information on there.
I'm asking for your opinion, I guess, but given that we have 63 students that have, or special ed students transferred in, and this is, I suppose, a choice that people have to do this. It seems to me that we have it's saying we have a very good system, or that is drawing people in. Is that,
Well,
would you agree?
I suppose, I mean, I believe that our special education program, where we have excellent teachers, we serve the students well. We also are required to take students. We have an open, enrollment policy. We can't discriminate and say, well, this student is a special education student and has all of these services, so we're not going to take that student. Except
parents-
in the case if we don't have the appropriate services and we can't serve the student. This year we still are really low in our speech services, our speech therapists. And so if new students come, there's a potential, if we can't see that we can serve the student, that's really the only legal way that we we understand from our legal advisor that we could say we can't accept this student. But otherwise, in our continuing students, if we find that we don't have services, we still have to, we have to find a way to get those services in place. As you recall, we had a very expensive speech therapist.
Yes,
My
yes.
first year I was here
remember
from some company in Florida. I mean, it's very difficult to find that.
But 63 students is out of how many, about how many special ed students altogether that we have?
I don't have that
You mean just
either.
elementary?
Yeah.
We're running about 11%.
So what the exact number is, I'm not sure.
So 11% is about.
660
Yeah, there you go.
So
yeah.
this is 10% of them.
Mhm.
Okay. So whereas they are 5% of this population transfers, there are 10% of the special ed population.
Of the total population, yes, that's correct. So then on to the Santa Barbara
Can I
schools.
ask a question?
Oh, sure.
The transportation entries,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, San Marcos High School, 10 students served, $50,000. But the little number 2 above that, that means that
That
the
means
50,000 is for the 2 people.
2 students.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So, yes, on to the Santa Barbara, it's the high school, excuse
And
me, and secondary.
Have we, I can hold this question, but I assume we've talked to the Santa Barbara Transportation or whoever the provider is and tried to negotiate the best possible price, but
Yes.
how recently and?
You know, I can't speak for the special education department, but I talked, in fact, I spent about an hour on the phone with Santa Barbara Transportation today with our music program, the after school, and they try as hard as they can to get as many kids, you know, they really work their routes well and try to eliminate extra costs. So I would say yes, that we do work on that. When was the last time this was checked for special ed? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't believe we've had a comprehensive review since we had Mary Stark in the district. That's now 2 assistant superintendents for business ago.
Is the cost in part so high because we are transporting them to another district?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm not quite sure how.
I mean, do we have to transport them to Ventura or to Buellton or whatever it is?
No, these are students coming to our.
Yeah, so are we transporting them from Buellton
From-
or Ventura? Because, I mean,
where-
secondary.
That would help explain
You know, that's a-
25,000 a pop.
I'm going to check on that. I don't have the answer, and unfortunately, I was hoping Joanne Pulley would be here, and she's protecting her home from the fire, so. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get that
That's a great
information as a
question.
board brief.
That's a really good question. So then out of the Santa Barbara High School district, the 39 students that are served as transfers, it's roughly about 1% of the total transfers.
Big difference.
Mm-hmm. Then the last page, of course, is the charters, and I hope that wasn't too confusing from the description there. Peabody, the person who wrote this out, or who compiled it, wanted to give a good explanation of the Peabody model because, again, with their new, the MOU that we signed with them, they actually pay us, pay the district to service with the special education students. So he figured out this whole formula around how the exact Peabody structure works. I don't know if you really need all of that, but the total cost for the instructional, he was showing the instructional aid time was the $19,000. What originally happened when I received this, all of that was in the individual instructional aid. It was a huge number, much more than that. And it was kind of apples and oranges. It was put in it was calculated differently, so it showed a large number, but actually other students were able to use the aid. It wasn't an individual aid. It was an aid in a classroom that had transfer students and non-transfer students. So he recalculated it and put a percentage kind of based on the time and the number of kids in the classroom. And so that's how he used this. Also with Peabody, it's again is the average salary of a teacher. So it may not represent exactly the Peabody teachers that are there today. But I wanted it to be consistent in the way the whole chart was done.
I just want to make sure I understood what you said about Peabody reimbursing us.
Yes.
So let's assume that the 19,250.
That's just for the aides.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The 51,740.
That's just for transfer students. They actually, I believe the figure's something like 280 something
Oh, they
thousand.
reimburse us for all of them.
Right.
Okay.
All of the special ed, not just transfer
not
students.
just the transfer.
That's
Okay.
part of the MOU.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me why Santa Barbara Charter is not included?
Because they do their own, they cover their own special ed. We're not included in that.
Okay.
You mean they're their own SELPA? Or?
Yes, they get their own funding and they service their students. We're not involved in that. We do serve Cesar Chavez, and we serve Peabody, and they pay us for that. And then we have the total on the back. And one thing that was missing from the total when this was delivered to me in order to get it in time for the board packet was I asked about the revenue as far as there is additional special education funding that we get through the SELPA. And so this revenue that's on your sheet represents just the revenue limit per student. So what I did, and this was kind of a rough estimate, is that I took what from the budget sheets that we have, what the elementary district and the secondary district get, and I looked at the percentage with the transfers, and it added an additional 26,698. I would need to check with Shirley to see if that's accurate, but I think it's a rough estimate. So it brings the total revenue up to around 592,694, and that changes the encroachment to 133,826. Again, these are approximate numbers and based on average costs of aides and teachers and such. And that's just for our transfer students, as far as the encroachment.
So despite the fact that there are some really high-priced items in here, when you take out what the money that's provided from the state, the total encroachment is only $133,000.
Well, just for transfer students, and that represents
That's-
a
no, that's what I
small
mean,
number.
just for
Oh,
the
right,
transfers.
right, exactly, yeah.
No, because a moment ago, before we looked at the bottom line,
Yes.
it was starting to look like horrendous
Oh,
amounts of
yes.
money. I mean, are we paying transportation to bring people from Oxnard?
I don't believe
it's sorta
that's true,
like-
but I want to find that out.
Yeah, it's sort of like, well, if we are, it still comes out to 133.
Right.
I don't want to say that's not a lot of money, but we
Well,
have
it's less
larger
than-
encroachments.
Right. And so, yes, we get all that revenue limit, and there's additional funding. It's not a lot, but it helps a bit.
But we don't get anything additional by virtue of them being transfers.
No, no. And the SELPA funding model is another issue too. We don't get like per ADA numbers. It's a whole different, it's based on services. So any other questions? I know this was a
No,
request.
thank you very much. That was,
Just a report
that
for
was
your
very
interesting
interesting.
report. Very
Thank you very
interesting
much.
report.
You know, we're of course late here, and
Start pruning here.
so we're pruning, yes. We're going to just do F3 and F4, and then go back to the consent agenda. And I'm afraid that all these the salaries, the healthy kids, we're going to have to save for another time. And sorry to have kept you all here. Okay, so F3, Christine Robertson. And I have to say it's after 10:30.
This is the first reading of the reopener tentative agreement between the Santa Barbara School Districts and the Santa Barbara Teachers Association. Christine Robertson is our Director of Personnel Services.
Thank you.
As Dr. Sarver said, this is the first reading for the recent reopener that we have with SBTA, and it's a tentative agreement that we have reached, and we are very pleased and proud at how this has turned out. But for the first reading, you've attachments, and for the community who's watching and will be watching on TV, those particular agreements reflect Article 5, which is health, welfare, and benefits, in that we will be increasing the cap by $375 per full-time teaching equivalent. We will also be increasing the amount of the percentage that we pay for the SBTA president. We have a calendar proposal for 2008, 2009. It's the same start for secondary and elementary schools, and a modified year-round calendar with a start date within 2 weeks of the elementary and secondary schools. We've also added additional language in the SBTA contract regarding additional teaching periods above and beyond the regular assignment. Basically, the fiscal impact, it looks, and these are rough, it really wasn't here, but we've done some calculations, and approximately $289,000 for certificated staff, with a total of $460,000 across all units to increase the cap. And this would be coming out of the general funds, and you have the tentative agreement attached, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. This will be coming back next Tuesday night for its second reading and action, and SBTA is currently in the process of getting prepared for their vote for ratification next Tuesday on the 30th.
Thank you very much. If it's possible somehow, maybe we should advertise. It's sort of a little too soon in some ways to advertise that we may have a new calendar, but on the other hand, it would be nice to get some feedback on this new calendar, so I don't know how we do that, or...
Well, we're hoping we would know in a week.
Okay.
So
at that point.
Well, at that point, I would really like to hear how the district district staff propose to present this to parents in the community, particularly on the educational benefits of both a united calendar for the one that follows the more traditional, although it's not so traditional anymore, but the non-modified, I guess you'd call it, calendar.
Although it's modified.
Yes, well, both in terms of instruction and in terms of student attendance, so.
Okay. Thank you very much. And you're here also, you're standing there because F4.
That's correct. This particular article is a CSEA this time in terms of a tentative agreement for promotion and hiring practices or procedures. And this was a carryover from the June 26th agreement that we signed with them, where we were going to sit down and continue to work on language for looking at promotion from within and how we were going to be running interviews and conducting those kinds of processes. So basically, attached is the agreed upon language for promotions and hiring procedures, and CSEA will be taking this particular article to their members for ratification sometime within this next month. You do have the attached language with you. It's brand new. Every piece of it will be inserted into the new contract when that is developed with CSEA. And the second reading will come back to you probably next Tuesday night, October 30th.
Excellent. We look forward to next week.
Okay, thank you.
Next time. We're back to the consent agenda, and we have pulled D7 was the first one. And I believe Ms. Parker?
Yes, D7, that was the approval of the Dos Pueblos High School discretionary block grant plan, and I just had a question for Mr. Hetjonk, actually. And it's about developer fees. And their number 3 is to use their discretionary block grant for new and/or replacement furniture and equipment for both new and existing spaces. And I'm wondering, I believe that for developer fees, that you can buy classroom furniture for new spaces. Is that correct? Maybe. If you're not, it would be great to hear.
I'd have to discuss that with Mr. Price.
Okay.
He always uses the terms construction, reconstruction of school buildings.
Right.
So I would need to refer to legal counsel on that. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm happy to go forward and approve this, but I just want clarification on that because I don't want them to use this resource for furniture for a new classroom if we have other district resources
Well,
that might
a
be
new
available.
classroom for developer fees would be a new classroom that's being built.
Right, and this is for their theater, which is just being built.
Oh,
These
okay.
are classrooms in their theater, so.
I'm sorry, as I'm familiar with the board items, so that's why I
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
It may, yeah.
All right,
Makes
so given that I would like more information about developer fees for classroom furniture for newly built, newly constructed rooms, I move to approve the 0607 DPHS discretionary block grant budget proposal.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All four say aye. Okay, then the other one was D11?
D11.
D11.
D11 is a request for consultant services as an interim replacement for Ed Diaz, our Assistant Superintendent for Business Services. I would like to bring Eric Smith into the district. Eric Smith is a former Chief Business Officer in Berkeley Unified. He has worked with the district before in previous FICMAT studies for our district. He comes with the highest recommendation from FICMAT, from School Services of California, and from our own County Office of Education in Business Services.
Could you address when he would start and also when you estimate he might finish?
He would start the 1st of November, although he would only be coming into the district on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. So I believe that's about the 5th of November. And I think the 1st is something like a Thursday. He would be here until we have a new assistant superintendent. I expect that process to take a minimum of 2 months. Other districts our size, in similar circumstances, have gone through as many as 3 rounds, which takes most of a year. I don't know that he would commit to most of a year, although he might apply for the position. Who knows?
So it's $1,000 a day, 3 days, $3,000 a week,
Plus expenses.
plus expenses, yeah. And that would be then for at least 12 weeks, the way you're talking. You said a minimum, 2 months.
A minimum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's really kind of open-ended, isn't it?
It is.
Almost.
It is.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So 4-0, approving. I think that is, we go to the end now, right? There's things on the end. Coming events.
I think I announced most of the events. We do have a special board meeting on November 1st. It's at 4 o'clock here. It's our first single plan presentation group, elementary schools.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock. That's
Okay.
it.
Any board correspondence? Any board comments? Any future agenda items? Let's see,
Yeah,
we
I have
had,
a future agenda item.
okay, go ahead.
I'd like to have the subject of the development of a plan or a set of prioritizing the use of developers' fees put on the board, on the agenda.
Okay, anything else? Okay, does that get us to the other side? Oh, I get to do this. That concludes our meeting. What do I say?